Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. We are just at the outset of another college football weekend, week 11. And what a weekend it should be, because the matchups this weekend may be the best of the season thus far. They are astounding. I don't know how I'm possibly going to watch as much football as I would like to watch or evaluate or review in talking football with all of you, but that's a good problem to have. It is a Thursday night in which we've got a nice little matchup tonight at Heinz Field with Pitt taking on North Carolina, and we will check it out, of course, tonight. We're going to be on the air during part of that game, and would invite everyone to stay here while you check out the game with one eyeball, maybe both eyeballs. You just need to listen a little bit and check out the live chat and jump in there, as we will be on the air for the next couple hours. And Pitt and North Carolina kick off at 7:30 Eastern time. You would have guessed at the beginning of the season that this was a meaningful game for both teams. That would have been my projection, and was in picking North Carolina to finish, I believe 10-2 was my projection. 9-3, 10-2. Pitt at 8-4 was my preseason prediction, but it has become a very important, meaningful game for the Pitt Panthers and Pat Narduzzi, as they are now a 7-2 football team at the top of the Coastal Division, and they have a very clear path. It's all in their hands to go to the ACC championship game and not even face a daunting, number 3, 4, or 5 Clemson team at that ACC championship game in Charlotte. So a clear path and a reasonable expectation to win the conference, not just to, as they did in 2018, eke into the conference championship game at 7-5 and get blasted with Kenny Pickett throwing for, trivia question on the night, how many yards did Kenny Pickett throw for in the 2018 ACC championship game? This number is stuck in my head, and it's not a very high number to be able to need to stick in my head, but I've got in mind for stats. But on top of that, this is not a difficult one to remember. Kenny Pickett against Clemson in 2018. How many yards did he throw for in that game? If anybody can throw that in the live chat, I will give you a hand clap of applause, because that is stuck for me. I don't remember how many passes he completed to get to this yardage total, but I do remember the yardage total in a 42-10 Clemson win that wasn't that close. So again, nice little game tonight. North Carolina and Sam Howell taking on Kenny Pickett and Pitt at Heinz Field. Also, very intriguing news. I find this fascinating. The UCONN football program, which obviously has not measured up to much of anything in its history, except Randy Edsall's first stay in lifting them out of what was at the time, I don't remember when the renaming of Division 1, 2, 3, that changed to the Football Bowl subdivision versus the football, the FCS designation, and when that came about. But nothing really changed. But prior to that, of course, UConn football made that huge, enormous leap and got kicked around for a couple of years in the Big East, but then became a contender in the Big East, actually won the Big East championship in 2010, correct? That's my best guess on that. It was either 2010 or 11. I think it was 2010, played Oklahoma. So to see the UConn Huskies in a major bowl game, at the time it was a BCS bowl game, a New Year's Six in the current lingo, New Year's Six game, the UConn Huskies playing Oklahoma. Yeah, they got embarrassed. They got knocked around. I'll refrain from saying embarrassed, because there are a lot of bowl games that finished 48-17 and New Year's Day 6 games. So BCS bowl game for UConn, that was, of course, the pinnacle for that football program. And since then, it's been all downhill. Randy Edsall actually had his plans already in place at the conclusion of the Fiesta Bowl to leave and go to Maryland. It didn't turn out well for him there either. He goes back to UConn, and as we see many times at the tail end of a coaching career, just didn't have the same drive, determination, focus, plan put in place to make things happen and be successful at UConn that second time around. And so Randy Edsall, after a 1-8 finish, he's gone. But the announcement today, did you see it? Jim Mora, former UCLA head coach, Atlanta Falcons, Seattle Seahawks, successful in the NFL, multiple times taking teams to the playoffs in the NFL. Jim Mora then goes to UCLA. Was he successful at UCLA? Well, considering what was directly before him and after him, yes. Highly successful? No, not at UCLA. Never won the conference. Did go to the Pac-12 championship game. And his best team went 10-3, finished in the top 10 in the country. So he had a top 10 finish one particular year. I believe that was 2015 when they beat Kansas State in the Alamo Bowl. His last year there was in 2017. Obviously, he preceded Chip Kelly, who's done nothing there. Gave us a quick burst in September, but he's 5-4, and he's been, to this point, a failure. But Jim Mora, at 59 years old, has taken over the UConn Huskies football program. I'm interested. I'm intrigued. You probably figure, hey, he can take this over. The expectations are basement. They're low, low, low. And if you're into that sort of thing, meaning program build, it's all just laid to waste. And you are starting this thing from the ground up. No, it's not a first-year expansion program. It's not when like FAU started playing football or Liberty started playing football or some such like that, but it's as close to that as possible. South Alabama starting football, 12 or 13 years ago? Has it been that long? Something in that range. It's not quite that. There's a structure in place. There's something there in place, but it all has to be built. And that's a great challenge for a lot of individuals who would like to just, hey, I'm going to put my stamp on this thing and we'll see where we can take it. Jim Mora's got that at UConn. We got Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football going to stop by to talk about Jim Mora. We'll get Tony's take on UCLA football as well, but I really want to ask him about Jim Mora because Tony covers UCLA intently for Last Word on College Football. He's at all the games. He's an alum, and he follows UCLA and the Pac-12 as closely as anyone. And I wanted to get his take on Jim Mora and the challenge that he faces at UConn. I find it intriguing. At 8:30 Eastern Time, we will be joined by Tim Aiden and Marty Leap from Black Shoe Diaries to break down Penn State football as the Nittany Lions prepare for Michigan. Otherwise, we're wide open to talk college football from now until probably the conclusion there around 9 o'clock, something in that range. We could take it for 2.5 hours here at the Voice of College Football with all of you. It's great to see all of you. And down on the banner, you see below, the least I could do is say Happy Veterans Day. And of course, thank you so much to everyone out there, to everyone I'm speaking to right now, whether that be live or who watches the replay. There's no way to properly explain or express gratitude for your service in the military. Many have paid the ultimate sacrifice, of course, and that is more the focus of Memorial Day here on Veterans Day. Thank you to everyone who is serving currently. Hurricane Logan comes to mind, who's serving currently, and a viewer and supporter of the Voice of College Football. I don't want to start trying to name people in any such way because most of you would be out there. I know David Knight as well, serving in the military, who have served in the past or currently serve. Thank you so much. If you would like to make yourself known in the live chat, that would be amazing as well. If you would like to, if you don't choose to do that, I certainly respect that. But so that we can all at least say thank you and honor you, because there are a number of precious and meaningful tenets and staples to our nation. And they've had to be protected through the years. They've had to be defended and protected to secure our freedom, our liberties, our way of life, our capitalism, and the pursuit of happiness. And all of that has had to be defended. It's one thing to set those things up, and that's, of course, important to make the right choices in building a nation and to do it the right way, and to give people the ability to work and succeed and grow and have families and be successful and pursue happiness in whatever form that is for that individual. But unfortunately, there are evil elements out there that have tried to take that away from us throughout the years. And so it has to be defended and continues to have to be that way. If you look around the world, you know what I'm talking about. So the threat never ends. So thank you to all the veterans. What a list of college football games this weekend. Oh my goodness. Please join us on Patreon. I want to thank in particular, and everybody who joins us on Patreon, thank you so much for signing up for the Voice of College Football community. That's what we are. We're a community over there on Patreon, and we've got other things planned for the off season that are going to make us more of a community there on Patreon. But just here in the last 24 hours, Chris Kelly, Todd Bowman, William McMillan, and Joe Looney, thank you so much for signing up on Patreon at the Voice of College Football community. So I think most people have signed up there to say either, hey, Mark, I want some winning picks. And then others just say, well, one of those four, I don't remember who, was kind enough to say, as many people have said, Mark, you don't really need to do anything over here. Just this is just a show of support. So thank you for that. Whether it is or not, whether it's just a show of support or you would like to partake in what we've got there, the Voice of College Football community, thank you so much for joining. Patreon 13 and 8. I pick all the top 25 games each week. Plus, there's some other games that interest me, so I throw those in there as well. So all the top 25 games. Plus, I'll throw some more in there. And so I pick about 20 some games per week. 13 and 8 against the spread last week. And 120 and 77 against the spread this season. That's 61%. Are there people out there that do better? Yes. Are there people out there that do better, that charge $5 a month to be on Patreon? No. You can go to all sorts of betting sites, and if you want the picks from the so-called experts, and many of them won't do as well as I do, they charge like, shoot, $500, $1,000 a season. So anyway, we want to, and the intent of the Patreon Voice of College Football community is so far beyond just getting my picks and the picks of 20 media members. Steve Day, Steve Hellwagon, The Wholesome One, Tony Gerdeman, Kevin Noon, Kevin McGuffey, Tony Siracusa, Jason Ray, Corey Bratta, Ty Hudson you see on here on a regular basis, Andrew Hattersley, don't want to miss anyone, but Mike McDaniel and Paul Van Wagner, all sorts of great guys that we have as media guests on a regular basis. They provide their picks as well here at the Voice of College Football. The teams that we covered this week leading up to this huge weekend, I just want to make sure that you know all the content that's out there. It's not all posted here on the main channel because I wanted to keep this clear. Ultimately, I would like this main channel to be nothing but live streams, call-in shows, live streams, national live streams, and videos that I post that are nationally topic-driven. National topic-driven. You know, college football playoffs, expansion, conference comparisons, conference rankings, national topics here on the main channel. But because I'm recording so much for all the other channels, and doing all the team specific content, it's been tough for me to kind of put together a topic each day to post a video here. But that's my goal, is to have a live stream, call-in show on a regular basis here on the main channel, and then just attack the national scene here on the main channel, and then have all these team channels for everyone else. But that's where we're headed, hopefully. But I've not had the time to focus on a video here at the Voice of College Football each and every day. So, my goodness, this week we've got content on LSU, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas, USC, Oregon, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and others that are not coming to mind right this second. So please check out the team channels. Iowa, of course. But check out the team channels, and here's the deal. If you like a team, and we've got 25 team channels. I'm not going to run through all of them right now, but most of the best teams in each conference. Of course, that was the priority. We didn't start with the team channels and say, we're going to do Kansas State and Illinois first. Of course, we started with the best teams. So the top of each conference, we basically have represented on our team channels. So if you love any of those teams, if they're your teams, please subscribe to those team channels that are of the teams that you, of course, are a fan of. But in addition to that, if you're supporting the Voice of College Football, please subscribe to any channels that are headed toward that 1,000 mark. And in particular, I would go to Iowa and Alabama, Notre Dame as well. Iowa would be the priority. Get our Iowa channel to 1,000. We're around 740. We need to get to 1,000. Anybody watching right now, please. And then once we get well past 1,000, if you want to unsubscribe, go right ahead. But it's great to have everybody here. And again, happy Veterans Day here at the Voice of College Football. We will have Tony Siracusa joining us from Last Word on College Football. Let me see what you guys have in the live chat. We will open up the phone lines after Tony joins us, because I do not want to have the phone lines open and have a number of people waiting while I'm talking to Tony. Exploring with Ben's really good at this. First. It's good to be first. He definitely has a characteristic, a strength that I do not possess at this current time. And I would say that I'm working on it, but I'm really not. But I should be working on it, but you can only work on so many things at once. So being on time, being punctual, that's good. Exploring with Ben. No, Mark, haven't been sitting here waiting. Got plenty to do in preparation to move from Houston to North Dakota on Monday. Wow, that's quite the move. Houston to North Dakota. Hopefully that's a good thing. When people move, it always runs through my mind, is that job related or relationship related, or just you feel like you want to go somewhere else in the country? Hopefully that's a good move. Mike 3883. I want to let everyone know, because Mike 3883 comes to mind when I see this. So hi to you, Michael. That a lot of people leaves comments to the videos, of course, and I hope that you're having conversations with each other. I look through the comments. I see just about every comment, but just impossible. It would not make any sense for me to try to respond to all the comments. I respond once in a while. But it wouldn't make any sense. I wouldn't have time to do everything else. So I hope you guys understand that. Man, the top 25 that actually makes sense. I wanted to produce a video, because here we are, Thursday night. This happens every week. What happens every week is that we get through the college football weekend, and I think about all the videos I want to produce. I want to say this, and I want to say that, and I want to address this and that. But I line up my day on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but with nothing but records and live streams to get the content on the team channels lined up. And then we hit Thursday and we're already headed toward the weekend already. I wanted to produce a video where I compared Georgia to a number of the contenders in the other conferences to say, okay, Georgia's the standard. They're playing the best football. That's not even debatable. They're the best team right now. That doesn't mean they're going to win the championship. That doesn't mean that somebody could not beat them if they played tomorrow. It just means that they have played the best football to date. And there were a couple videos I wanted to produce there. One would be comparing Georgia to other main contenders outside the conference, not Alabama, because they would play Alabama or Texas A&M in the SEC Western Division Championship or the SEC Championship game, but to compare Georgia in a hypothetical against Ohio State, against Cincinnati, Oklahoma, Oregon. The other idea I had was I'd taken the notes on this. I wanted to take the initial college football playoff rankings and then go through history to see how relevant are these, or how likely are these four teams to make the final playoff spots. And I did that, but I have not produced the video. Let's see if I've got those numbers here. I do. I've got like 15 different notepads here, so I'm not going to dig that up right now, but I was curious to see what the success rate of the first four in the initial rankings in getting to the playoff. It's actually, let's see, 1 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, 3 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 4 out of 4 last year. The initial playoff rankings were Bama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State. So it's been about half, a little over half, but then I had a lot of other things to conclude in that video as well. So the second rankings that we've had released, of course, Michigan State got knocked out of the first four, replaced by Ohio State. So it would be a little bit different of a video now that we've had two releases of the college football playoff rankings. Also wanted to produce a video where I just flat out went through the college football playoff rankings and talked about all the inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and contradictions there. The one that really hits me is Penn State is not ranked. Does anyone get this in any such way? Penn State is not ranked. Okay, there are 13 teams in the country in the Power 5 that are 6-3. So the rankings are going to include some 6-3 teams. Anybody's top 25 rankings are going to include some 6-3 teams and exclude some. Just simple math. 13 teams in the Power 5 are 6-3. That, I don't know if that really hits anybody else. That hit me when I was doing my rankings, and I thought, man, there's a lot of 6-3 teams. Let me count them. 13. So they're not all created equal. Obviously, some have played much more difficult schedules, and one of those would not be Utah. To compare Utah and Penn State is a joke. No offense to any Utah fans listening. This is nothing against you in particular. This is not personal. We're an unbiased channel. We just call it the way it is. Utah's best win is UCLA, Arizona State. And I was making a comparison on Twitter today. So I took the 3 best Penn State wins, the 3 best Utah wins, and then the 3 losses by each team. And again, it's a joke. It's an utter joke. I don't just have Penn State in my top 25. Like, they're deep in the top 25. They're like 17, and they should be. They beat Auburn. They beat Wisconsin. They beat Maryland, which a Big Ten fan would say, Maryland sucks. But you know what? Maryland's 5-4, just like Utah's second and third best teams that they've beaten. Their second and third best wins, UCLA and Washington State. Well, that's Maryland. And Maryland's actually play a much tougher schedule than Washington State and UCLA. So Maryland's had to play Ohio State, Iowa, West Virginia, and whoever else they've played in the Big Ten, Minnesota. So Maryland's 5-4 is much more credible than UCLA and Washington State's. And then, of course, Utah's lost to BYU, San Diego State, and Oregon State. So anybody who's going to jump on Penn State for losing to Illinois, that Illinois loss is basically Utah losing to Oregon State. It's the same loss. So cancel those out. And then what do you have? You've got Penn State losing to Ohio State and Iowa on the road by 3 in a game in which Sean Clifford was hurt and they were up by 14 points. And then you've got that compared to Utah losing to BYU, Oregon State, and San Diego State. It makes absolutely no sense. And it's only 1 point of many. Let's get to this fascinating story involving Jim Mora, former UCLA coach, Atlanta Falcons, Seattle Seahawks, moving to UConn to take on this reclamation project. We've got Tony Siracusa on the line from Last Word on College Football. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
I am doing well. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Appreciate you jumping on board because I thought of you instantly. This happens many times when I see a story and I think, who's the best person to talk to? It's Tony.
I appreciate that. Always glad to come chop up some football news with you.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated by this. So
Sure.
We have Jim Mora, whom, now that I've switched the shot, need to scoot over. There we go.
There you go.
We've got Jim Mora.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for you younger fans, he had I'm not going to try to frame it as some amazing NFL run, but he was successful multiple times in the playoffs. Atlanta Falcons, Seattle Seahawks, did a nice job, most notably working with Michael Vick with the Falcons, went to an NFC championship game. And he takes the UCLA job, 46-30. And if you look over the course of his career there at UCLA, routinely going to bowl games, topped out at 10-3, top 10 finish there in 2015.
15, right? Yeah.
15, yes. Yep. Kansas State bowl win against Bill Snyder.
Right.
And certainly UCLA has not reached those heights since. So there we have Jim Mora, who's just, I think every time I listen to him speak in depth on football in general, on the networks, that I learned something. And now he's taken over this UConn Husky program, which I kind of outlined it a few minutes ago, basically where that program's been and being lifted from FCS level play to FBS, and Randy Edsall building it that first time, but being unsuccessful in bringing it back. And it's certainly one of the worst programs in college football right now. No question about that. They have chosen to go the independent route. So I am fascinated with Jim Mora taking up this challenge. And now I'm fascinated to hear your take on him taking up said challenge.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting move for him. I mean, look, he's been in the broadcast studio as an analyst. He's been a studio analyst the whole time for about 3 years. He had some time off after his departure from UCLA. And as you point out, he was 46-30. And man, wouldn't UCLA fans love to have a coach who was 46-30 about right now? But he was 9-14 over those last 2 years. And things pretty, they plummeted at UCLA. He wound up in a situation where he was changing coordinators every year. 1 year was the defense, next year was the offense. I mean, Noel Mazzoni staying with him for 2 years was earth-shattering because that was long-term in the Jim Mora era there. As things started to go south on him, his first move was to change coordinators, change the scheme, change the offense, tweak it, whatever the case may be, to kind of stave off the criticism that he was getting for himself. That having been said, again, I think you look at the situation UCLA is in now, and fans think back fondly on the Jim Mora era, although he wasn't well received by the time he left. The move to UConn, I think, is a great move for him. As you said, UConn has been kind of drifting lately. They canceled their season last year, in the COVID era. It really had more to do with the fact they had nobody to play than they were trying to protect the program from COVID, because they left their previous conference. They wound up owing money on their way out the door. And so they've been kind of drifting with no real direction. Randy Edsall, good guy, was never going to be the coach to take you to some stratospheric level. And I'm not sure Jim Mora is either, but Mora is a definite step up from Edsall. He will recruit well. He'll recruit the Northeast well. He recruited Southern California well when he was here. He recruited he brought in, Josh Rosen and Jalen Phillips and guys like that. So he did well with the recruiting here. There is a story that, Chip Kelly took over with empty cupboards or bare cupboards, and that's just not the case at all. There was a lot of talent left behind by Mora. So I think he will recruit well, and I think that he will probably struggle in the first year just because, he's rebuilding and he's not taking over a program that has had any level of success anytime recently. So there's going to be a little bit of patience that will be required. But I think by year 2, you start to see Mora win some games that UConn hadn't won before. Because he is a good thinker in terms of college football, in terms of looking at analytics and seeing what works and what doesn't. And he doesn't have to have the lack of patience that he had with his coordinators at UCLA, because the expectations at UConn are pretty much non-existent. They are paying him $1.5 million for the first year, and then the salary gets elevated beyond that. They did that as a favor to him so that he can continue to collect what's left of his UCLA buyout. If the contract were front loaded too much, it would negate what is left of what UCLA owes him. So they backloaded the contract. The $1.5 million plus some incentives if he wins, and that hasn't been made public yet, wins a certain amount of games first year, bowl game, anything like that. So I think he's going to do well. And I say that in relative terms. I mean, it's UConn. You can't fall off the floor. You know what I'm saying? It's cliche to say there's nowhere to go but up. But I think that's true with UConn. And so I think Moore is a good hire. Now, my next caveat to this is he a long-term hire? And I say no. Because I think if Jim Moore is getting back into coaching, there's a greater purpose to it. And it's not to coach the UConn Huskies for the next 20 years and have a statue built to you, outside their stadium. It's because there are other things in the 4, 5, 6 year Jim Mora plan. And it's probably to get back to the NFL and coach somewhere in the NFL, either as an assistant or a coordinator, whatever the case may be. But I think UConn has to be pragmatic about that. You hire this guy knowing that is the case. UCLA was his first college coaching job. So it's not like he's coming with a resume of, 20 years of success in the college game and he's going to turn UConn into, the next great college factory. That's not what this is. This is a guy who can move the needle, and he can get some success, a little bit maybe in first year, a lot more in year 2. And we hope to be able to hang on to him for 4 or 5 years to set the stage for whoever is next, or whomever is next, as my editors would correct me on. I think that's the long term for Moore. He's probably there 4 or 5 years and see what else is out there at that point.
Yeah. So UConn being, of course, in the Northeast, let's take the most available football rich state. Let's say New Jersey, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
are good football playing states in the top 10 or 12 in the country. He's not going to get the athlete that can go to Penn State, Notre
No,
Dame.
no.
But let's say for that level player that is being recruited at the Syracuse Rutgers level,
Mm-hmm.
and Jim Mora can sell them on, I know the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I can take you, and maybe you go from being a low level 3-star to having a reasonable 5-year career in the NFL and making yourself $3 or $4 million to set up your life. I can develop you into that type of player.
I think that's true, and I think if you look at I think that's probably a good approach for him to take. Look at this. Look at the players that a Syracuse or Rutgers is recruiting. I'm going to add Boston College into that mix. Look at the players they're recruiting. You're going to have an easier time getting into UConn than you are Boston College. No offense to UConn, but that's the academic realities. And he can do something with those players. Is he going to bring 4- and 5-star recruits like he did to UCLA? Of course not, because UConn is just not that kind of draw. But can he make something out of the 3-star players that he takes from other schools and some of the low hanging fruit? Absolutely. And he can pull off a couple of wins, 2, 3, 4 wins in the first season and build from there. And when he does leave something behind that is better than when he found it,
And he also can point to what Edsel did the first time around and say, this is possible at this institution, which was contending for Big East championships.
Mm-hmm.
And they did reach a New Year's Six bowl game, which was a BCS bowl game at the time against Oklahoma. This was 10 or 11 years ago. I don't know, based on the structure of it, meaning being removed from a conference, whether that's feasible now, whether that's the same, but he can certainly sell it as such. This is what's happened at this school in the past.
Sure.
So it has been done here to a certain level of success. So we can do that again.
But if you're a UConn fan right now, UConn football fan, wouldn't you just be in 2 years, by year 2, be happy just to be back in the bowl picture? I mean, you've got nothing right now, and you're going nowhere right now. Get the 6 wins, get into a bowl game. Doesn't even matter, if it's a New Year's 6 game or any. It just absolutely doesn't matter. A tier 2 or tier 3 bowl game should make you thrilled because it's part of a building process. This is not a quick turnaround. It's a barren program right now. There's not a lot of financial support behind the program. He's getting paid well, but it's not like they're going to build new facilities and do all these, huge things that you see at a major program. It's a basketball school. It just is. And football comes in somewhere after that. But but so any level of success, and I said it kind of sarcastically, you can't fall off the floor, but I mean it seriously. If in year 2 you're in a bowl game, I don't care if it's the Kraft Bowl up in Palo Alto or where, who cares? It is a bowl game. It is used as a recruiting tool, a great recruiting tool. There's a financial payoff to the school. So there's that. That's good, man. You're now on a positive track. And I do believe Mora can get them there.
Absolutely. They've won 1 game this year, and that was against Harvard, correct? It was an Ivy League school. Yes. By like 6 points. Yeah.
Right.
They are at the very bottom of the barrel.
And they had chaos because Randy Edsel said, I'm going to step down at the end of the season. And then 24 hours later, he steps down. So it's been chaos. It's been the lack of football last year and Edsel's chaos this year. And this will just kind of calm the waters. You're going to have a football coach for 3 to 4 years. Maybe if you're lucky, maybe another year or 2 after that, but 3 to 4 years, who's going to build a new platform for the next guy to build upon. So I think Mora is a good enough coach to do that.
Speaking of coaches, you've got one who's currently 5-4 there at UCLA.
Yeah, it's
the the stretch drive is pretty soft with Colorado coming up Saturday night. Pac-12, everyone, 9:00 Eastern, 6:00 Pacific. If you've got the Pac-12 network.
Boy.
Wink, wink. I don't know how many of you do. We should take a poll. Anyway, at USC, of course, it really bothers me when that's not the final game of the season. But anyway, USC, UCLA at the Coliseum, and then a game against Cal, who's having all sorts of issues currently, of course, with COVID. But UCLA is going to be a favorite in all those games. Who knows about the USC game on the road? Regardless, 8-4 is certainly possible, which would had sounded really good to me, at least prior to this season. But to see this team play, it's not been as impressive as what an 8-4 team should be in the Pac-12 to me.
There you go. I think you got it spot on with that. The eye test says 8-4 is not really 8-4. Let's go back to when you and I talked before the season, and we talked about, a projected record for UCLA. And I said at the time that, Vegas had it at 7.5 was the over under. And I was sitting on 7, but kind of inched my way over to 8. And so 8-4, okay. This doesn't feel like a good 8-4. The LSU win was magical at the moment, right? Confetti coming out through the stadium and the Pac-12 commissioner hugging people and Martin Jarman high-fiving players on the way to the tunnel. And turns out LSU isn't very good. So there's that. They got beat by a good Fresno State team. They got beat by a good Oregon team. They got beat by a good Utah team. The team, in other words, who have they beaten that is a marquee win? And, look, they went into that 3-week stretch against Washington, Oregon, and Utah, basically with a shot at the Pac-12 South on the line. Turns out they beat Washington, and hey, it turns out Washington isn't that good either. Everyone who projected them second in the Pac-12 North, when the season started, shame on you. That would be me right here owning it. I projected them second, and it turns out they're not all that. You had the chance then against Oregon and Utah, and you fell flat. I don't care what the score of the Oregon game is. I don't care that they only lost by 3. They got outscored 34-3 in a 2.5 quarter stretch of that game. So you just got run over, period. And then Utah just trashed them. I mean, they gave up 290 yards rushing to Utah. It was horrible. So now you've got these 3 games, and we have laid it out on our site just as explicitly as possible. Matter of fact, we had an article that published about 15 minutes ago as I was coming on the air, which just lays it out. Look, there's no wiggle room in this. You have to win all 3, and you have to go to a second-tier bowl game. 8-4 probably gets you into the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. If you lose any of those games, you're 7-5, and you probably wind up at the Las Vegas Bowl. Whatever. 6-6, meaning you won one of the 3, and you're at the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl at SoFi Stadium in LA, and that ain't going to cut it either. 8-4 saves Chip's job. I'm convinced. Some of my media brethren who cover the team are not. They don't think even that is good enough because of the way they flatlined against Oregon and Utah. I think 8-4 probably saves his job for a year. Now, he's in year 4 of a 5-year contract, and year 5 is not a guaranteed year. So they would have to give him at least a 1-year extension, because you can't go out on the recruiting trail and sign players when you're in the last year of a non-guaranteed contract. 7-5, I don't think saves him. 6-6 absolutely does not save him. I will tell you that if they lose any of these 3 games, and I'm not sure he survives the following Sunday.
Wow. Okay.
Look, I mean, you've got to make these moves sooner in the era of December signing day. Teams have to make these moves sooner rather than later. Let me tell you a stat that we dug up that we've published a couple of times. It's a head scratcher, and it took some digging. 4 times in this century, UCLA has played in a bowl game with an interim coach. 4 times in the last 21 years with an interim coach because they fired the coach before the season was over and they qualified for some low-tier bowl game. It happened to Bob Toledo, Carl Durrell, Rick Neuheisel, Jim Mora. All of them fired before the final game of the season and the bowl game coached by an interim. It could be 5. It honestly could be.
Just looking at the record and nothing else, it seems not reasonable to fire a coach who goes, if I'm getting the record straight, 3-9, 4-8, 3-4, and then jumps to 8-4, or even jumps to 7-5. It doesn't seem reasonable. Just looking at the record, nothing else, not the context of the games or anything like that.
See, I think the context is everything in this situation. Because, yeah, you can say, hey, look, he made the progress. There's this, and we're on the right track. No, this was the most senior-laden, experienced UCLA football team in more than a decade. With the seniors, the fifth-year seniors, the sixth-year super seniors. This was the 4th most experienced team in the entire country. And if all you get out of that is 7-5, then, where are you going with this program? Because next year is an overhaul. You lose off this year's team, you lose 22 players who have started at least one game this season. And then you're going to lose some more, you'll lose all your seniors and 6-year seniors, and you'll have some players leave early because as bad as they are, I've had the opportunity to talk to several scouts who, track the team. And there are a few players that are, that are well in the NFL sights right now that they really want a shot at. So you'll see a few players leave early for the NFL. But essentially, you lose 22 players who started at least one game this season. This was it. And if the best you can do is 7-5, not good enough, man. Not good. If you're going to have this young team next year and you're going to be in a bit of a rebuilding mode to whatever degree, there's a sense that you may as well do it with some fresh blood at the coaching level too. Part of what Chip has done is he's going down with the Jerry Azzanaro ship, his defensive coordinator. And, let me take 60 seconds to get into the nuts and bolts of that because there's a little bit of inside baseball with it. You look at what happened at Oregon State last week, right? They got beat by Colorado. Defensive coordinator was fired the next day. Now, Jonathan Smith at Oregon State is not trying to save his job. He's not in any danger right now. Look at what Dan Mullen did at Florida, right? That was a job-saving measure. That was Todd Grantham's got to go, so I don't have to go. There are ways, though. We're seeing Washington. Jimmy Lake is having a horrible season and is just stepping in the mud every week. He fires his offensive coordinator after the debacle against Oregon, which was really his fault, not the coordinators. But these things are happening and coaches are doing it. Now, you have Chip Kelly sticking with Azzanaro, who is a longtime friend, has coached with him at multiple places, including the NFL. But for 4 years now has had one of the worst defenses in the country, particularly one of the worst pass defenses in the country. And that's not subjective. I'm talking about they're 120 out of 130 teams in that range every year. And Chip will not make him answer to anybody or anything other than him. UCLA coaches, because it's a public school, they have it in their contract, media availability. Has to be reasonable media access. For 3 years under Chip Kelly, we got nothing. We were kept away from the assistant coaches. Martin Jarman, the new athletic director, comes in. He's tired of listening to us complain about it. He's tired of looking at Syracuse's articles that, say, hey, we would have loved to have heard about what happened with the defense, but no coach was made available to us yet again. So during the spring camp and fall camp, all of a sudden we were getting assistant coaches, except one, Azzanaro. And last week, Chip was feeling some heat for it. He got asked a lot by the media at his weekly press gaggle, why can't we talk to Azzanaro? Why won't you let him answer to the fans, to the ticket holders, to the boosters, to the media. And he said, because he doesn't owe it to you. If he wants to talk, I'll let him talk. But I'm not going to make him talk because this is America. Chip went to This Is America, and he has a choice. Well, it's in his contract. It's just not being enforced. It's not being imposed upon him. And Chip is going to go down with that ship. You know, he really is. He's going to, Azanero is going to be there by his side through whatever happens for the next 3 games. If Chip gets to stay, Azanero probably gets another 1-year contract out of it, which is what he's been living on since Chip got there. And he's Chip's guy. And Chip is running a really, he's running a really dangerous game, living and dying with that.
Folks, what a weekend of games here, week 11. I just jotted down all the best ones, and I jotted down like 12 or 13 games.
Yeah.
It's a really good list of games. We will get to everybody's calls, and we will bring you in to talk college football instead of week 11 in this North Carolina-Pitt game tonight. But before we do, Tony, I would like to get your take on this. Just the overall job that the College Football Playoff Committee is doing. So it's so easy to pile on and say, you know, this is wrong and that's wrong, and they should be 5, not 3, and do all that. It's much more difficult to try to compile the rankings yourself and have them all make sense and to be able to defend every position, because there is a lot that goes into it, and there is a lot required in analyzing schedules and performances and results.
Right.
So it's not an easy job, but I take some exception to some of the rankings and what I feel are contradictions and moving targets and differences in how it's evaluated today versus what it was last season or 5 seasons ago and all of that. So what is your take on the job that they're doing in the rankings?
You're right. It's easy to pile on because they're easy targets. I was on the media conference call with the committee after the new poll was announced on Tuesday night. I think what becomes frustrating is you put it as, you know, you do these rankings and you can justify where you have everybody, right? If you do your rankings, and I look at your rankings every Sunday, you know, and I don't always agree with them, but I look at what you're putting together and I can say, okay, well, I can see where you did that. It makes sense, right? They don't have the ability to explain what they did. And that is my problem with it. They went along talking about, you know, head to head. And let's start with the fact that they talk about the committee watches all the games every week, all the critical games and so on and so forth. Someone posted to me like, well, they're like a jury giving a verdict. And I said, no, because a jury has to follow the rule of law. These guys kind of just have guidelines, and it's almost as if, all right, give everyone turn in your top 25, and then we'll do the calculations from there. My problem is this. The committee said, and this was Gary Barta, the chairman, said, we put Oregon over Ohio State because of the head-to-head. Fair enough. Why is Michigan ahead of Michigan State then? Pick one or the other. Pick a path, pick a criteria, and stay with it. But his answer when asked about that was, Michigan's a more complete team right now than Michigan State. Hey, look, it was only 14 days ago that Michigan State beat Michigan. Michigan became a more complete team by then. And if you're going to say they're a more complete team, how do you have Cincinnati ranked ahead of any of them? I love Cincinnati, but they are not a complete team. Their offensive line is going to get Desmond Ridder killed one day. And they struggled against Navy. They struggled against Tulane. You can't call them, they're undefeated, but you can't call them a complete team. So again, which is it? Is it an eye test or is it the head-to-head? Which one?
Tony, that argument sounds more reasonable and sensible if it was applied to the Ohio State-Oregon situation rather than the Michigan
because
State.
Ohio State's a more complete team than Oregon right now. Absolutely. Now, they also were quick to give credit to Oregon for the win against Washington in really bad weather because it was rainy and windy in Seattle. I'm not sure if they remember that the University of Oregon is in Eugene. They play in the rain a lot. It's really not that big a thing. Now, look, I try not to get too overworked about it, recognizing it's the second poll. And even though there are only 3 weeks left of the regular season, things are going to happen and things are going to work themselves out. To me, if Oregon and Ohio State both run the table, there's no way Oregon makes the playoffs. Oregon is going to win its way out of the playoffs, if that makes sense. Because here's what's going to happen. Let's take Ohio State, right? They got to get to that point of winning out. They had to have beaten Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, whoever is going to come out of the West, whether it be Wisconsin, Iowa. It would help them a lot if it were Iowa, because Iowa's got a better overall record as opposed to their conference record, right? But what happens with Oregon? In 2 weeks, they play Utah in the regular season. You beat Utah, but now you're going to play Utah the week after that in the conference championship game, or 2 weeks after that in the conference championship game. You've diminished Utah in terms of your own strength of schedule. You beat Utah, you go and beat them again. Utah's now a 5-loss team at that point. Your wins over Utah wind up hurting your strength of schedule if you're Oregon, because you turned them into a 5-loss team. So therefore, on strength of schedule, which comes into play more at the end of this process than early on, you got to take Oregon out and put Ohio State ahead of them, even if both of them win out.
Well, if the committee's protecting itself, it made the right move initially by placing Oregon in front of Ohio State, because, of course, they could never have placed Oregon behind Ohio State initially and jumped them. They had to start out that way, because they can always keep Oregon ahead of Ohio State as long as it's a 12-1 situation for both teams, and always claim, okay, we are honoring the head-to-head. Or at any point, Ohio State's schedule is so good, as you just mentioned, down the stretch here, with Purdue ranked, Michigan State highly ranked, Michigan, and a Big Ten team. At any point, they could say, well, that was the domino that we need. That was the one.
There is the strength of schedule, which they do use as a factor towards the end, just not early on. Same thing like when they talked about Oklahoma, because if you're Oklahoma, you're like, wait a second, they're like 4 or 5 one-loss teams ahead of us, and we're undefeated. Their answer on Oklahoma was the eye test. Their answer was, show us the marquee win for Oklahoma. Show us any marquee win yet this season. Now, Oklahoma's got the Bedlam game coming up. They've got other good games coming up. You win those, and Oklahoma will make its way up. But again, so then it's like, well, which is it? Is it the eye test, where you're looking at the subjective and things you can't really quantify, or are you looking at head-to-head, or are you looking at strength? Pick a lane, and drive your car in that lane. So I don't have a problem with, where teams wound up so much as the lack of viable explanation from the committee to justify it. If you're really sitting there watching all of these games and making your notes and putting in your top 25 or whatever the case may be, then I would think it comes out probably close to this. Not maybe exactly this, but I am convinced it'll play itself out. Look, I had to turn in yesterday. I had to turn in my ballot for the Bolitnikoff Award for the semifinals. We pared it down from 50 down to the 10 semifinalists. Hey, look, I spent hours and hours and hours finding separation among some of these players, right? It wasn't just, oh, well, here's this guy's yards. Okay, he's in. Here's this guy's yards. No, I went and looked and said, hey, this guy has all these yards, but it was really just over 2 games. This guy's been consistent, for 9 games. I'm putting him over this guy. You got to do the work, not just say, well, we watched all the games and here's what we think. It's not good enough, man. You got to do the work.
I'll make this comparison, and some people may say, what's it matter? One team's number 24, the other team's unranked, but this is the same committee that ranks the top 4 and the teams that are 5, 6, and 7.
Absolutely.
Utah's number 24. Penn State's unranked.
Right.
Okay. Yes, Penn State had an awful loss, quote unquote, awful loss against Illinois in overtime.
Mhm.
If you look at Illinois and look at one of Utah's losses to Oregon State,
Right.
it's pretty much the same loss.
It really is.
And then outside of that, Utah's beaten UCLA. Arizona State's probably the best win record-wise.
Yeah.
And then UCLA.
Right. Yeah, if you're counting UCLA as your marquee win, doesn't say much for your resume.
This is the resume for Utah.
Right, exactly.
Penn State's beaten Wisconsin,
Yep.
Auburn.
Yep.
And they lost to Ohio State
right.
in a respectable fashion.
Absolutely.
And Iowa, razor close without their starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And Utah's lost to San Diego State and BYU and Oregon State. Like, those resumes don't even look like they're close to me.
They really don't. I think Penn State's getting punished too much, for their losses. Utah, Utah's losses were tough to swallow. They were early on in the season for the most part. But still, I mean, if you're gonna look at this thing over the long haul, the entire season, then you've got to measure everything, not just, well, did they get better as the season went along? Well, maybe, but you still got 3-4 losses on your resume. And like I said, when Oregon beats them twice in the next 3 to 4 weeks, then I'm not upset at the Utes. I'm really not. I am a big Kyle Whittingham fan, actually.
Sure.
I think the guy has done a remarkable job in what that program has been through over the last year with the death of 2 players. And I don't think anybody could have pulled a program together within that community the way Kyle has. So trust me, I'm a big Kyle Whittingham fan. He's boring as heck, but he does the job. He's not hired to be exciting. But the resume just really isn't all that impressive for Utah.
And one other point I wanted to throw by you, just
Sure.
as a case example of what you have to look at when doing these rankings all over the place. Mississippi State last week was number 17.
Mm-hmm.
They played Arkansas this past weekend. Arkansas was not ranked, but we can kind of conclude that they were close to being ranked.
Mm-hmm.
They were 5-3 before this weekend. They had been high in the rankings after beating Texas and Texas A&M, and then lost some games and got knocked out of the rankings. Well, those 2 teams play a game at Arkansas that comes down to the final play of the game.
Right.
And Mississippi State misses a field goal, or the game would have gone to overtime.
Right.
And I'm just trying to lay this out for everyone that this is where this gets tricky. Well, Mississippi State, if they're the 17th best team in the country, and they just played the 26th or 7th best team in the country, there's not much between about 20 and 40 in the country. There's not a
lot of separation at that point.
Does that team drop 9 spots at least, losing on a missed field goal from 40 yards against a team that you're now going to rank, that has been ranked most of the season? I think it has more to do with 5-4 doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So we need to drop them out.
I do too. And again, it's fishing for justifications, which is what they did on the press conference on Tuesday night. They were fishing for justifications for what they had done. And when you do that, you sound kind of sloppy. You sound a little lazy about it. Like I said, look, you know the game. I mean, man, you do this every day and you put all this work and hours into it and watch everything you can. And you and I have joked about it that, with me traveling to cover games and covering games at the Rose Bowl, my DVR goes on overload. But when I get home, I've got about 17 games on there that I take about 72 hours to pile through, so that when I am voting, on the Nagurski Award or the whatever, Outland Trophy or whatever, we've done our homework, right? Tomorrow, actually, the first round of ballots for the Football Writers Association are due for the All-American team. Now, we're not finalizing the All-American team yet. It's too soon. But starting Sunday and going forward, we start having 2 to 3 hour long Zoom sessions. The 300 members of the association submit their ballots tomorrow, including me. And then I'm fortunate enough to be on the finalist panel. So there are like, I think 15 of us across the country who then go through the ballot, say, okay, we like this, we like this. I think this person belongs here. And you really start negotiating it. And we are required to have justification for what we're saying. We are told ahead of time, got an email 2 days ago. Don't forget, bring your details, bring your facts, bring your, whatever you need to justify what your votes are. My email is like overwhelmed with stuff, from schools right now, pitching every player they can think of for the All-American team and all their sizzle pieces and whatever. But that's fine. I welcome it because we'll do our homework. This just felt like, hey, we watched all the games and here were our votes. And here's why. And that's what it felt like. And I may be not giving them enough credit for what they did do in their deliberations, but with the way they explained themselves, that's what it felt like when it was over. We watched all the games and Michigan's a more complete team. Like, wow, based on what?
Tony Siracusa, last word on college football. Head on over there, check out his work. Kevin McGuffey, Jason Ray, the whole staff there at Last Word, doing a bang-up job covering the game we all love. Tony, we appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Always glad to do it, Mark.
All right, good stuff from Tony, as always. And again, I was really intrigued by this Jim Mora hire at the University of Connecticut. And Tony was the guy to talk to with his just overall insight into these type occurrences and hirings and firings across college football, but specifically since Jim Mora's got the run under his belt at UCLA. I'm going to fire up the phone lines. Give me just a second here, but I was jotting down the games this weekend. This is strong. This is really strong. And we've got North Carolina and Pitt starting here in just a few minutes, and I've got my DVR cranked up for that one. And my goodness, starting at noon on Saturday, Michigan, Penn State. And I'm trying to do two things at once so there's not dead air. But Michigan, Penn State, of course, in Happy Valley. And Oklahoma, Baylor. I think I screwed that up because I was trying to do two things at the same time, and I think I put the wrong number in. We shall see. I think I did. All right, let's not do that. Let's just get the call-in line set up.
Thank you for calling Mullen Studios. Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Okay. All right, got that set up. We got to go to the site and get that set up. But my goodness, Michigan, Penn State, Oklahoma, Baylor, Mississippi State and Auburn, Northwestern, Wisconsin. Badgers a 25-point favorite, playing so much better recently, of course. Oh, let's listen to the, probably can't hear the fine piano music that's pumping through the line right now. And certainly, Georgia, Tennessee. Can Tennessee hang, put up some points? 15th ranked offense in the country, taking on the #1 defense. Georgia has not faced an offense that highly ranked this season. Purdue, Ohio State. Of course, that game. And getting some personal calls in. Kind of screws up the phone line sometimes. Purdue, Ohio State, Minnesota, Iowa, and on and on and on and on. Man, what are you going to watch this weekend? Shoot. Miami, Florida State, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Virginia, NC State, and Wake. It's basically for the division championship. Clemson still has something to say there, but that goes a long way in determining the ACC championship game spot. NC State at Wake, Arkansas and LSU, TCU and Oklahoma State, TCU, showing some life last week under Jerry Kill, beating Baylor. Now they've got Oklahoma State on the road. Even Oregon and Washington State, with what's going on with Oregon each and every week, just slipping by teams. Hey, now they've got Washington State. So the phone lines are open. I got to switch some audio lines here real quick. Make sure I can hear all of this. And the phone lines are open at 860-499-3332. And I'm going to take this call as soon as I turn that monitor down. Here we go. First call of the night on a Thursday night. Launching week 11. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? The real MVP. I don't know how you do it, but yeah, you've got a quick trigger finger, my friend.
Well, thank you. And that was a great interview you just did.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Tony's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what he echoed at the end is kind of what I've been hearing. If the playoff committee would just come out and said, you know what, we made a mistake last week, I think they would get a lot less hate for what they do. But they have this entitlement, I guess is the right word, that they're always correct about every single team ranking, and they're never wrong, and just kind of rubs me the wrong way.
What you just stated is what we would all like to see out of leadership, period. Because we all make mistakes. So there are also mistakes made at top leadership levels. And it's rare, but when it does happen where a leader, whether that's in your company, in your department, at home, the leader of the household, whomever says, you know what, I said this last week and we started to do this because I made this decision, but this was not the right decision. So we're going to correct it now. That always buys a ton of respect.
Oh, yeah. And if they just come out and say, you know what, after the public said Michigan, they played, we thought they were a more complete team, but we looked into it further and we decided that the game should matter more than being what we felt was a complete team. So that's why we put Michigan State ahead of Michigan. I think a lot of people on here would be like, you know what? Good job, playoff committee. I don't think we would be rushing. I think that's part of the reason why we're trying to rushing to expand or trying to dilute the playoff committee and stuff like that. We should go back to the BCS era and stuff like that because there's no rules.
Yeah, and again, it's not an easy process.
Oh, it's not easy, but at least with the BCS, you understood exactly the formulas they were using. At least, and with your rankings, I don't agree with everything your rankings say, Mark, but at least I can understand. Hey, understand your logic and where you come from.
And I don't state this every time I produce it, but I hope everyone knows because I do say this when I think of it. When I unveil my top 25, I say right off the top a number of times. I don't proclaim that these are perfect. They're flawless. They can't be argued, debated, that you couldn't say, hey, Mark, your number 4 should be number 2 and your number 3 should be number 5. Absolutely. This is all up for debate and they're not perfect or flawless in any such way.
And that's the beautiful thing about the rankings in any sport is it's subjective. I mean, even in sports where they have standings, for example, like the NFL, well, not every team plays every other team. So there's some subjectivity into it of which team's better.
Yeah, but in the NFL, that doesn't matter, though. It's all about the objectivity. That's all that matters. That determines who makes the playoffs. Yeah, people can argue all they want that this 6-3 team's better than that 8-1 team in the NFL, but that's not going to do them any good.
Right. I was just drawing a comparison.
Yeah.
That's all I was doing.
And we do need to analyze and evaluate the performance on the field in college football because there's just too many teams playing too many different types of schedules at different levels that we can't just say, You're 6-3. You're better than the 5-4 team. That's all there is to it.
I think scheduling. I think scheduling is the biggest issue in college football.
Amen to that.
I think it's exposed to it. Because Cincinnati, if they play 3 or 4 decent teams and they go undefeated, you know what? Fair enough to them. They give them a shot. But their schedule, there's a lot of pause. And if you gave them another team, maybe not even like a Notre Dame, but you gave them an Arkansas, a Kansas State, I'm trying to think, Utah. Well, not Utah. Yeah, I guess Utah because they're ranked for some reason. Give them something like that. Give them some meat to the schedule. See if they can still win out. Instead, they're struggling against Tulsa or Navy.
Yeah, it would be fascinating. It's not going to happen, of course. They play in a conference and all of that, and they play their conference schedule. But yeah, that would forever be fascinating to say, okay, Cincinnati play this schedule instead. We may not even be talking about Cincinnati right now. They might be a 6-3 team. So
right.
They probably would be.
Mark, I want to get to some of the games and for this weekend. We got a lot of good games this weekend. I mean, a lot of good games. But the game I think I'm looking forward to most this weekend is Oklahoma at Baylor. Is it weird to say, but this is kind of the committee and some fans, is it a prove-it game for Oklahoma?
Sure it is. Oklahoma's schedule's backloaded. They're playing all the best teams in the conference here at the end of the season. So the best team that they've played probably is, people are going to jump on me, is still probably Texas in the conference, even though Kansas State's got a better record. They're 6-3 overall. So take your pick. Kansas State or Texas are the two best teams that Oklahoma has played, unless I'm missing. No, they're playing all the best teams. They've got Baylor, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State to finish the season. The three best teams in the conference other than themselves, that's who they're playing now. So it's time to, they got to beat some good teams now.
I think that'll be the game I go to first. The second game I'm going to watch, though, is Michigan at Penn State. What's surprising, but not maybe a little bit surprising, is that the line is only 1-point favorite to Michigan. I thought Michigan may have been 3 or 4 point favorites, but they're basically saying it's a toss-up game.
Well, to me, it is.
Is how's Sean Clifford doing? I know he was hurt a few weeks ago. He played well in the Ohio State game, but is he fine now?
Well, if you get your ribs busted up, that's supposed to last for quite some time, but he looked like he was really struggling against Illinois physically. But like you say, he played well against Ohio State, and he played well this past weekend. So he must be fine as he can be until he probably gets to the off season.
And then, so I'm not even going to touch on that. Oh, yeah, Miami plays Florida State. I know this is weird to say, but is the winner of that game the best team in Florida?
Probably, yes. I would have never guessed that, because Florida certainly had the rep and a couple wins early in the Alabama performance to look like the best team. But now, see, if Florida State wins that game, then I'm not so sure of the answer to that question. But if Miami wins that game, then they're in the best spot of all the Florida teams. Clearly, yes.
And what's weird, and I know a lot of people haven't recognized or realized this, but if Pittsburgh loses this game tonight, that's happening right now, which is very much possible.
Yep.
And Miami wins, they control their destiny for the ACC, not the playoffs, but the ACC, which is, I would think, a huge accomplishment for the Miami program and Manny Diaz.
It sure is. Pitt just has to lose one other game, and Miami needs to win out. Yep. It's something else. Sure. Virginia's involved in that, correct? Where are we?
I'm not sure if Virginia's involved because I don't. Did Miami beat Virginia head to head?
Virginia beat
Have
Miami.
they played you?
So I'm looking
That's
up the
gonna make sense.
standings right this second. So
I think they're tied.
yeah, that's why I'm saying Virginia needs to be involved in this. So yeah, Pitt controls the division. Virginia and Miami both have 2 losses. So Miami needs Pitt to lose, and they also need Virginia to lose.
Well, Virginia plays at Pittsburgh. in
Okay,
2
so
weeks.
so we still have that game left. So
Yeah.
they need the winner of that
And they
game to lose another game.
Right. The only other game Virginia plays in the conference is Virginia Tech, so we'll probably win that game.
So Miami should be rooting for Pitt to beat Virginia.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I think that's all I got for you tonight. Have a great rest of your show.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good night.
Yeah, nope. You do the same.
All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Homegrown Cowboy. How you doing?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Well, I've got a quick question for you and just a quick comment. But my question is it's very simple. Who has the most powerful offense? And I asked this in chat a while ago, and I got a few responses, but I just want to hear from you. Who has the most powerful offense, Alabama or Georgia?
Georgia. Here's why.
Okay.
I like the Alabama quarterback position slightly, even though Georgia's got 2 of them, so that can always be taken into consideration. We know that if Georgia loses one of them, that they've got a capable backup.
Okay.
Georgia's so deep at running back, so I like that. 4 deep at running back. Alabama's been struggling to run the ball. I don't know when the last time an Alabama running back, number 1 running back, had this kind of stat line. Brian Robinson against LSU, 13 carries, 18 yards. I don't know when the last time that's happened. I don't know if that's happened under Nick Saban. But it all comes down to me on the side of Georgia, offensive line. They might have the best offensive line in the country.
Well, I've got to put a lot on this on Bill O'Brien, but that's my opinion. But hopefully he'll change things. He's not hitting his tight ends when the defense is blitz. It just seems like he's throwing long ball plays when we're blitzed. And LSU basically took the playbook from Jimbo Fisher, is what happened. And I don't know. I was just really curious about your thoughts on that. Since you said Georgia, okay, what about Ohio State and Georgia?
Yeah, well, before you asked Alabama, Georgia, I thought you were going national, so Ohio State was in my brain, and most people think they're the best offense in the country, but the last couple of performances have not been great. They've been good. They've not been great. And Ohio State's got an issue along its offensive line right now in terms of trying to either play its best players or play the best combination, and they're wrestling around with that. They're basically playing 4 tackles and a center instead of guards, and it's hurting them, it appears. So I think that's a great comparison. Georgia, Ohio State. This might be the 2 best offenses in the country, maybe. Throw Oklahoma in there. I tend to say Ohio State over Georgia, but if their offensive line doesn't show me some level of dominance the next couple of weeks, then I'll swing back to Georgia.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's hard to go against Henderson. When they recruited him, boy, that was one hell of a recruit. Oh my God,
he's great. Their receivers are, a ton of these teams have very talented receivers that are freakish athletes, but Ohio State's are just polished. They're they're exceptional.
Yeah, I wish Alabama had Ford back because we need running backs. That's for sure. But anyways, my quick comment is that USC. I'm really fixated on the head coaching position. I just can't wait to find out. I mean, I guess it's going to be the end of the year before they announce somebody, and just solely upon economics is my reason. But I can't wait to find out what who the head coach is going to be for USC. So, all right, Mark, I appreciate your time, and I'll chat with you later. Okay.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the call. You have a good night. Enjoy the games this weekend. All right, here we go. The voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is Credibly Junior.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, so just wondering how Michigan gonna beat Penn State this weekend.
How much is who going to beat who by?
Now, how they gonna beat them? How we gonna do it?
They're going to beat them by scoring more points.
You think it's gonna be like running the ball or more passive game?
Let's say passing game. More from the passing game.
I'm hearing a couple players could be injured for Penn State.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Well, we always appreciate the call. Thanks so much for calling up.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Have a good one. All right. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, how you doing? This is Will, Michigan fan. How you doing tonight?
Hey, Will. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Well, okay. I had just something I was thinking about. As far as the BCS rankings, do you think it's possible at all? Because, it is a subjective thing. I mean, they are looking at wins and losses, and obviously wins matter more than anything. But their job is to put the best team in the best slot. And do you think, being subjective with that, do you think it's possible at all that maybe they looked at the game between Michigan and Michigan State and saw some of those, a bundle of those bad calls, and that may have impacted some of that? Because, the last thing the last thing that I enjoy doing is blaming the refs for anything. I'm one of those. I believe you ought to beat the team. Don't blame the refs, because every single game there's going to be at least one or two bad calls. Every game. It's just you've got to just prepare for it. And especially in the Jim Harbaugh era, we flop these big games anyway. So the last thing I want to do is blame the refs. But dude, that game was, it was bizarrely crazy. I don't think I watched it so closely. Every time any kind of play was in question, it always went to Michigan State. I don't know if you noticed, but when Kenneth Walker ran one of those touchdowns in, he dropped the ball before he went in the end zone. It was a touchback. You could see it when they reviewed it. His hand was loose. He didn't have possession of the ball. And if the ball went in the end zone, that should have been a touchback. They ruled it a touchdown. And then obviously the Aiden Hutchinson, that was clearly a fumble. And Aiden Hutchinson picked it up and put it in the end zone. That was a touchdown for us. So they gave Michigan State a touchdown when they shouldn't have, and then they took one from us. And not just that, but I couldn't even count all the pass interference that was going on with Michigan State secondary. It was even the last play. And I'm not griping or complaining about it. It's done now, but that game was just crazy, the bad calls. It was beyond a lot of games that I've seen. Like, it was way beyond. And I'm subjective because I even said that during the Nebraska-Michigan game that it was a little bit crazy towards Michigan. That last drive when they stripped the ball from Adrian Martinez, I thought that his forward progress had stopped and they should have blew it dead then. That would have caused Nebraska to win the game because all they had to do was kick a 3-pointer. So I'm trying to come at it from a non-bias, but basically, do you think that might have something to do with it? Because it was a totally different level of crazy, the play calling.
So yes, I do believe that has something to do with it. So the rankings are made based on wins and losses first and foremost, or they should be. But of course, we're just not going with standings. It's not the NFL. There has to be an evaluation on the games. And so if Michigan State would have won that game 42-0 versus what happened, that game would be completely evaluated differently than what it is now. To your point, the Big Ten office has admitted that there were wrong calls in that game. So sure, the committee looks at that and says, we're just trying to evaluate the teams and select the best team. Here we have a game where one team won the game, but they benefited from a number of either bad calls or questionable calls. Therefore, we're kind of setting that aside as to what the result of the game was and just looking at the two teams and who's the better team. Well, Michigan had a 2-touchdown lead. They blew it, but there were a number of, again, questionable calls, bad calls. They were also playing on the road. It was a razor close game, even with the bad calls. Now, the two calls that you bring up, the call with Kenneth Walker dropping the ball at the goal line, I haven't seen these plays in 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks, so I'm going off memory of watching, 100 hours of football since then. But I thought that was inconclusive. And if anything, I thought it showed that he had the ball in his hand when he crossed the goal line. That said, even if he didn't, let's say he dropped the ball a split second before he hit the goal line. Let's say he dropped the ball at the 1 yard line. Now, the officials have to call the game the way it's played. And if somebody's enough of a knucklehead to drop the ball at the 1 yard line, then, hey, you didn't score a touchdown. You got to carry the ball into the end zone. True. But in terms of evaluating football play, that doesn't make Michigan a better defense because Kenneth Walker dropped the ball at the half-yard line. Like, that's
Sure.
You don't want to win or lose a game based on a player dropping the ball just inadvertently at the 1 yard line because Michigan's defense didn't prevent a touchdown. They did not play well on that play. Kenneth Walker scored a touchdown. So I see that as inconclusive and not really a factor. The fumble play, my thought was, I saw the replay 28 times like everybody else watching the game, and I couldn't really tell whether, and again, I haven't seen the play now for 2 weeks, so it's fuzzy in my head, but I know at the time that I couldn't make a determination on whether he fumbled or not. But the officials on the field called it a fumble. There was not nearly enough evidence for the replay booth to overturn that call. So they should have kept the call on the field of a fumble for a touchdown.
That was what was so astonishing to me is they were so conservative when it had something to do with Michigan. But with Michigan State, I mean, throughout the game, I mean, they were now on our end, they were calling Michigan for anything and everything. I mean, they were so on top of it. I mean, I can't tell me. And it was our fault. And now I'm not blaming the refs because I really believe Jim Harbaugh lost us that game. Now, obviously, we have a lot of problems in the red zone, and that's true, but he played way too conservative. You're not going to win these big games kicking 3-pointers in the red zone. You're just not. And he's a bad habit of doing that. He's still got an NFL mindset. And I think that hurts us. And I think that one reason that Purdue beat Michigan State was because they were ready for Kenneth Walker. They studied Michigan State. And that's a problem that I have with Jim Harbaugh. It just seems like we go out there just to play a normal Saturday game of football. Here we go again. Let's just do the best we can do. And it just didn't seem like they were ready for Michigan State's tactics. Purdue clearly was, and they were ready for the throwing game. And one thing that whoever the guy was that was talking about the Michigan State, the BCS guy, he said that Michigan State looks like a more complete team. What I personally got from that was, he said that Michigan looks like more of a complete team. Michigan State is pretty much Kenneth Walker. It's not that Michigan State looks fantastic. It's that Kenneth Walker looks fantastic, and he happens to be wearing a green jersey. And I'm not saying anything because Michigan State does have they have some good defensive players. They're a good team, but he literally scored every point during the game with Michigan. If Kenneth Walker would, and God forbid, because I don't care how much of a rivalry, I hate seeing anybody get hurt. These are just young kids. You know, I hate it when people cheer when the opposite player from the opposite team gets hurt. But just say something happened to him and he was out, it would be just like Minnesota with Ibrahim. I mean, they would have nothing. He's their one and only. I mean, you've seen Friday Night Lights with Boobie Miles. Kenneth Walker is Boobie Miles. He's their one and only.
Well, sir, you do realize that Mo Ibrahim did get hurt in week 1 against Ohio State, and that's not hurt. In all due respect to his ability and talent, which is exceptional. He's one of the best backs in the nation. That Minnesota's rushing game has really not suffered much. They even had their number 2 and 3 running backs leave. So they've been able to run the ball for well over 300 yards several games since then without Mo Ibrahim.
Sure.
And the one thing I will say about Kenneth Walker, yes, he's great. He's exceptional. I would give him the Heisman Trophy today if the vote came out and I had a vote. But at the same time, Michigan State's passing attack has been arguably better than Michigan's. So it's not all him.
Agreed. Well, in Michigan, our passing is just such an incredibly low bar because we can't do anything. I think when they throw the ball and one of our receivers catches it and they go out of bounds in the 10-yard line in the red zone or they don't run it for the touchdown, I'm one of the only ones not cheering because I already know we just lost 7 points because we're going to end up kicking three-pointer. We have so many problems in the red zone, and I don't know how much of that is talent and how much of it is play calling, but clearly we've got some problems with our talent. I'm going to be at the Penn State game, so I'm hoping that I think it's a winnable game for us. And like I said, I watched the Steve Dace. Look, we got to say a prayer for Steve Dace because he's been through a lot as a Michigan fan, and he's got the worst of both. Because here's what it is: he's seen so much Michigan football, it's hurt him just like it's hurt me. If we play Ohio State and Ohio State smashes us, I mean, it's just going to continue on with the depression. And then if we manage to beat Ohio State, Steve Dace may have a heart attack. So we got to say a prayer for Steve Dace because he's just like me. I'm in the same boat, man. Us Michigan fans have been through a lot. I want to say one more thing. The guy was talking about USC and their coaching search. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my personal belief is if Florida gets rid of Dan Mullen, I really believe Dan Mullen could be a very viable candidate to go to USC. I think USC is looking for something fresh, and especially somebody that's familiar with the SEC. I know a lot of people are saying, "No, he's an SEC coach." Dan Mullen is like from Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't care about being in the Southeast.
Yeah.
I really believe he could be a very good prospect. I believe USC would pick him up in a heartbeat. Yeah. I really thought they were going to go for James Franklin, but James Franklin's kind of a lame duck at this point. But I won't take it. I know you got a bunch more calls, man. I just wanted to holler at you and give you my point on that. I know I'm motor mouthing a little bit, so I apologize. And I just appreciate you taking my call.
Well, I appreciate you calling. Enjoy the game this weekend. Yeah, you're going to be right there in Happy Valley. So, yeah, enjoy the game.
Well, I most certainly will, man. I appreciate it. You have a good night.
You too. Dan Mullen to USC. Well, I don't know why USC would do that. My evaluation of Dan Mullen has dropped considerably, more so than any other coach in the country in the last year. And we've talked about this many times, so I'm not going to go through the litany of transgressions by Dan Mullen, both in terms of losing football games, but also just running his program like a circus sometimes and acting the fool. But that's what he's done a number of times. So I don't know why USC would want anything to do with Dan Mullen. I know he's a brilliant offensive mind, can develop quarterbacks. I don't know if he develops quarterbacks. He puts them in the right situation to win and play well at the collegiate level. I don't know if he's really developing them to the next level because nobody's really, other than Dak Prescott, played well at the next level. That's been a Dan Mullen quarterback. Our guy Brent leaves a statement here. I thought I had heard at one point, yes, that Jimmy Kimmel's name was put on a bowl game, and then Tony made the comment tonight and laid it down. So I was like, yeah, okay, this is a real thing. Jimmy Kimmel has a bowl game. I've not looked at the list of bowl games. I should know all the bowl games, which I typically do, but I've not looked at the list of, there's usually like 5 new bowl games every year and 5 that switch names and all of that. Yeah, I don't know that there's a man in America who gets paid for being funny that's less funny than that guy. Yeah, don't really understand that. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who do we have up next?
Oh, hey, Mark, it's Ben. I
Hey,
thought
Ben.
it was going to be a little while.
No,
Hey, how are you doing today?
I am doing just fine.
Hey, don't worry, I'm not going to. Don't worry, I'm not going to bring up the conference controversy we've had before.
Oh, this is the James Franklin, Jim Harbaugh.
Yep, the same one and only.
Hey,
I wasn't going to bring it up.
This would be the night to do it. No, nobody's calling me tonight, which is certainly fine. We've got a lot of people on the line, but everybody just wants to kick back and listen. So we got all night to talk about James Franklin and Jim Harbaugh.
Oh man, if I knew that, if I knew that, I would have pulled out my paper and look and it was like, oh, well. Anyways, I had a couple points about that. I will give you my viewpoint on it. And really where I'm coming from, I'm not coming from the fact that I think Harbaugh's way better. I'm not coming from I just thought at the time, I've seen people talk about Franklin going to LSU or USC, and then the same people, namely Mark, talking about firing Harbaugh. And basically where I'm coming from is, I mean, like I mentioned on the super chat, Harbaugh has less losses since he's been at Michigan than James Franklin, no matter which way you look at it. And you count it, and then you dismiss 2015. I don't understand why you would dismiss 2015 if you're just trying to compare them. What you were bringing up is Ohio State, how James Franklin played against Ohio State, but head-to-head, what's more important? I mean, Michigan played Penn State better head-to-head. I mean, they blew us out once, but we blew them out twice, and by a bigger margin. And those are the things that I think, yeah, you can look at like accomplishments as far as James Franklin has I said, boy, he went to the Big Ten championship game, right? Correct. And but Michigan's played a tougher schedule in general, and that's just pretty much my argument on that. And I don't have the stats in front of me, and I don't recall them all well.
Okay, you ready for me to cut loose on this?
Yeah, let's cut loose.
Okay. To me, there's a difference between saying one particular coach is better than the other coach versus saying one coach is more accomplished or has accomplished more at that stop than the other coach. So it's not necessarily the same. And I'll use this example. Tom Brady is the most accomplished quarterback in the history of the NFL. And we unfortunately can't have a conversation about that because it's just open and shut, closed. It's not even close. So he's the most accomplished quarterback in the history of the NFL. It's not even comparable. Like nobody's in the conversation anymore. Is Tom Brady the best quarterback of all time? Now that's a conversation because I don't necessarily think that he is the best quarterback of all time. He's accomplished the most. Okay. So if we want to compare Jim Harbaugh and James Franklin, who's the better coach? Well, we could have that conversation all night. Jim Harbaugh's accomplished much at other stops. I won't go through all that. James Franklin has not accomplished as much, but has had less opportunity at other stops. But what he accomplished at Vanderbilt's extremely impressive. Since who ever thinks of Vandy going 9-4 2 consecutive years? Okay, but we're talking about what they've done at Michigan and Penn State. Okay. James Franklin showed up in 2013, Jim Harbaugh in 2015. So 2 seasons earlier. And in the 2 seasons in which, let me make sure I got my years straight. No, Franklin showed up one season. Maybe somebody can check me on this. That would have been one season prior to, because Bill O'Brien, yes, Bill O'Brien was at Penn State in 2012 and 13. Okay. Because Paterno's last year was 2011. So O'Brien, 2012, 13. So Franklin was only there one season prior to Harbaugh. James Franklin did not get off to a great start at Penn State, but let's also consider what they were being dragged out of at that point. And I give Bill O'Brien most of the credit of dragging Penn State out of that mess, but it was still not given to, like, if James Franklin leaves Penn State today, he will hand the next coach a much better program than what was handed to him. Not even close.
Yeah.
Okay. So he goes 7-6 his first 2 years. So that's on his record, but he goes 7-6 with a program that you could pretty much call that is in the neighborhood of Purdue or Minnesota or Maryland by today's standards. So he goes 7-6, 7-6. And Jim Harbaugh obviously shows up, and Jim Harbaugh, I was singing his praises the first 2 seasons. He showed up and he went 10-3 and won a major bowl game, beat Florida in the Capital One Bowl his first year. That was a tremendous improvement over 5-7 before that. And then he goes 10-3 and takes Ohio State to the wire, the overtime game. Who knows? Maybe he should have won that game. They screwed up the measurement, whatever your perception and perspective is on that. And he took them to the Orange Bowl.
I don't care about that. I don't care about the foot. I care about other calls in that game, but not the foot.
Okay.
That could have been gone either way.
Okay. So if somebody wants to be an apologist for Jim Harbaugh, I will certainly give them the leeway to say he got ripped off in 2016 against Ohio State. Had they won that game, they most likely, we don't know, the game wasn't played, won the Big Ten championship game, and who knows what, been in the playoff. But that did not happen. So James Franklin, ironically, because we're having this debate, the same season turns around Penn State. He starts 1-2. They get blasted by Michigan. He then goes on this great ride. They beat everybody else, including Ohio State, the number 2 team in the country. They win the Big Ten championship. They go to the Rose Bowl, play an epic game against USC, lose 52-49. So there it is. Okay, since then, Jim Harbaugh had a lackluster 8-5 season in 2017. They bounced back in 2018, had a really good season, but again, downturn at the end. Lose the bowl game after they get blasted by Ohio State. Same thing in 2019. Have a good regular season, get blasted by Ohio State, lose a bowl game. 2020, you can throw it away or not. It counts on the record, 2-4. Okay, they bounce back this year, and they are what they are. They're in the hunt for the Big Ten championship.
But I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, honestly, it helps Franklin's case in the way of losses, because Penn State has more losses in 2020 than Michigan did, but they played more games.
They had a better record.
But but it's the same. But it's the same ratio.
No, it's not the same ratio.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be the same ratio.
The same ratio. What do you mean?
What wasn't it?
He went 4-5.
Wasn't Michigan a 3-1 ratio?
He went 4-5.
Wasn't it a 1-3 ratio?
He went 4-5. Harbaugh went 2-4.
Oh,
4 and 5 is a better
okay.
record.
I don't have it in front of me. It was close.
All
so
right.
I mean, it'd be close. But anyway.
Well, let me summarize it this way. I'm not going to go through every year
go ahead.
and prove why James.
Yeah.
Had a better
No, that's
stay
fine.
at Penn State
I didn't
than
mean to
Michigan.
digress.
No, that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
I am grinding this down as well. This is my conclusion. If you look at Jim Harbaugh's stay at Michigan versus James Franklin's stay at Penn State, they're extremely comparable. These have been 2 programs that generally are going 10-2, 9-3 most seasons during the stay of their current coaches. It's not like this is a joke. We're not going to discuss it. That's why I'm having the debate, because it is a debate. If somebody called me about comparing 2 other coaches that it wasn't a debate, I would say, we're not talking about this. It's not worth debating. But this is worth debating.
Yeah.
However, I side with Franklin, and I side with him decidedly because, number one, his team beat Ohio State once. So he at least beat Ohio State, a very good Ohio State team. Number two, he has consistently competed against Ohio State, consistently been competitive against Ohio State. 2014, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. All those games, close games. Some of them nail biters. Two of them just excruciating nail biters. Jim Harbaugh had a nail biter in 2016. Played him pretty well in 2017. Got crushed in 2015, 18, 19. So James Franklin has beaten Ohio State, and his teams have also played much better against Ohio State consistently. They've also won a Big Ten championship. They've also won 2 New Year's Six bowl games that Jim Harbaugh has not done. He's gone to 2, or he's gone to
But before we get
lost.
off,
And let me finish. And since 2016, James Franklin has a better record than Jim Harbaugh. So I'll let you speak, and then we'll wrap it up there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll wrap. Okay. Yeah, I would just say before, just with the comparing to Ohio State. Yeah, I mean that's true. They've done better against Ohio State, but at the same time, you could use it's just a splitting hairs. I mean, you could use the argument though that Harbaugh's been better head to head. I know they have the same record, but if you want to look at Michigan getting blown out by Ohio State and State playing good against,
here's the difference.
I mean, Penn State playing again against Ohio State, you can use the same logic. With a head-to-head,
no, you really
Michigan
can't.
blowing out Penn State.
You really can't, and here's why.
You
You are splitting hairs by saying Harbaugh's been better against Penn State than Franklin against Michigan. You are splitting hairs. They are 3-3 the last 6 games against each other. So that is splitting hairs, just saying, well, we've blown them out more than they've blown us out. Okay, fine. It's not splitting hairs saying Franklin's been better against Ohio State than Harbaugh against Ohio State. That's not even close. It's not even. It's not even.
Yeah,
close.
I know. Yeah, but okay. But here's the thing. I mean, you can do the same thing with somebody that's dominated Purdue recently in Ohio State. Michigan's probably beat. I don't know. I don't have a record, but Michigan's probably beat Purdue. Does that mean that?
Why are we dragging
because,
other teams? We're dragging the Ohio State's in the conversation because they're the standard in the conference. They are the standard. That's why we're talking Ohio State.
But is it better to lose the teams that you shouldn't lose to, or lose the teams that you should? You can make that. I mean, well, that's where
you can make that argument. But James Franklin doesn't have a great record against ranked teams, but it's better than Harbaugh's record.
Yeah, and that's the argument, and that's where I'm coming from. I mean, even with in Michigan plays Michigan State at the end of the season, and Ohio State's always better they have more talent, and they always get better, and that's what talented teams do. With the teams with great depth like Ohio State, they get better as the season goes on. Alabama, Georgia, they all do that.
That's not substantiated in any way. You can't substantiate that Ohio State's been better in November than in.
But you can this year. Do you think they were better at the beginning of the season or last year? I mean, sorry, beginning of the season or the end this year?
Well, up until
I don't know. I mean, I kind of. You're right. That you can't substantiate. This year they seem to be playing better.
If Ohio State
can go with Ohio State prepares for Michigan more than any other team, and they have all season to do it. So they don't do that with Penn State. You can use that. I mean, because they've admitted to it. I mean, so I mean, there is a difference there too. If you're going to use Ohio State as a comparison, but that's it. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Mark. It's very reasonable. My point from the beginning was the fact that we're talking about they're so close, and we're talking about giving a better job to James Franklin and Canning, Michigan's coach, Jim Harbaugh. That's all. but I didn't want to get into that. Like, I was going to save that for another time. I know
Well, I
we spent a
appreciate
lot
the
of
call.
your listeners' time. Okay, but anyway, all right, Mark. All right, you have a good night. I'll talk to you about something a little bit different next time, man. You have
All
a good
right.
one.
Sounds good, man. Thanks. I appreciate it. All right. We are going to talk some Penn State football. So that's a nice little segue from that call right into this one. We got, I believe, Marty Leap from Black Shoe Diaries joining us to talk some Penn State. Hey, Marty.
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
It's going just fine. I don't know if you can, when you're in the backstage there, I don't know if you can hear the conversations.
Yeah, I caught that. That was something else. Let me tell
Okay,
you.
so this is the third time, and I'm not dissing this caller because I appreciate him, and he is just I think there is a comment that I made in recent weeks that's kind of set him off, where I said James Franklin was doing a better job at Penn State than Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. So I think this is the third time that he's called me to argue this point, and I think I've clearly stated why James Franklin has accomplished more at Penn State than Jim Harbaugh has at Michigan. It's close. Their records are comparable, but Big Ten championship, you go to the Rose Bowl, play an epic game, you win 2 New Year's Six games, you beat Ohio State, you play them consistently tough year after year after year, not just like one time or 2 times, year after year after year after year. Michigan's not done these things. So that's the conversation we've had a number of times. Yes.
Yeah, it's just terrible whenever people pull out the facts like that. You know what I mean? To back up your argument. But
And to his credit, he takes it and we go back and forth and it's all good. So he's certainly a willing debater there. So we got, again, Marty Leap, Black Shoe Diaries. We might be joined by Tim Aiden as well. So we'll chop up the Nittany Lions and Michigan. Marty, before we get to this matchup, and I must be the Penn State apologist here this week, taking on this James Franklin versus Jim Harbaugh thing. The other thing that just drives me nuts, I tweeted this earlier today, and I've also talked about it. And since I had a Pac-12 guy on earlier, Tony Siragusa, I raised it to him as being just one of many what I consider inconsistencies in these committee rankings. And it's a tough thing to do to rank these teams, but my goodness, why is Penn State not ranked in these college football playoff rankings? It's not even like I think they should barely be in, like I'm arguing a spot. I have them like deep into the rankings. I have them like 16 or 17.
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, they probably should be a top 20 team when you look at their resume. Like, they beat Auburn, who's ranked 17th. They beat Wisconsin on the road, who's ranked 18th. Have the same record as both of those teams, and yet they're not ranked. And you look at the losses. I mean, you kind of touched on just saying how they play Ohio State tough every year. They were one ticky-tacky call away on John Lovett and an illegal touching from having the lead with 4 minutes to go in that game. Like, they played the Buckeyes extremely tough. And Iowa and Illinois, we've hashed out a bunch. If Sean Clifford doesn't get hurt, they win both of those games. So, yeah, it's amazing to me they're not ranked. Honestly, I thought they were going to be in the top 20 this week. And I have no explanation for it. It makes no sense to me. I guess it's one of those things with the committee that, hey, head-to-head only matters when they want it to matter. It matters for Ohio State and Oregon, but it doesn't matter for Michigan and Michigan State. It doesn't matter for Penn State and Auburn. It doesn't matter for Penn State and Wisconsin. But, my hope is that maybe this lights even a little bit more of a fuel, a little more of a fire underneath their butts on Saturday to go out there and prove to the playoff committee that they should be a ranked team and to keep their hopes of potentially playing their way into a New Year's Six Bowl alive.
Yeah, before you jumped on board, I made the comparison between Penn State's resume and Utah, who is number 24. And it's not like I'm splitting hairs. It's not even comparable. Utah. So if people want to jump on Penn State, and maybe the committee's doing this for losing to Illinois, well, Utah lost to Oregon State. Oregon State is the Pac-12 version of Illinois. You can look at the two teams, their records. So basically, if you're going to penalize Penn State, Utah, they've got the same loss. They've got Oregon State. That's their Illinois. So cancel those out. And from there, you can't even there are no Auburn and Wisconsin wins on Utah's schedule, and there are no Iowa losses on the road by a field goal without your starting quarterback in a razor tight game against a 7-2 team. There's none of that on Utah's resume. They lost to BYU. Their best win might be UCLA or Arizona State. It's just, I'm like, how can you possibly look at these two resumes and rank one of them 24 and leave the other team out of the rankings? It's just crazy.
Yeah, no, it's definitely frustrating because whenever you sent that tweet out earlier about that and you had me tagged in it, and it's like I'm looking at that and it's like I remember when the rankings came out Tuesday night thinking to myself, like, how in the world is Utah ranked and they're not? And after I saw that, it really was like, again, how in the world is Utah ranked and Penn State is not right now? I mean, ultimately, like, it doesn't mean a ton when you're talking about these guys or these teams, excuse me, towards the bottom of the top 25.
Sure.
But ultimately, if you look at where the Big Ten's heading, if Penn State wins out, they would have a legitimate shot at working their way into a New Year's Six bid. And that's where these rankings do matter. And, yes, play bowl games outside of the playoff don't mean a ton, but from the promoting your program health, recruiting, whatever it is, it's a lot nicer to say, hey, we played in a New Year's Six bowl for what would be, I think, the fourth time in 6 years for Penn State, as opposed to saying you're in the Outback Bowl or whatever. But again, ultimately, Penn State, with the schedule they have left, if they win out, that will take care of themselves. But yeah, it's mind-boggling to me that you have them unranked when you look at some of the teams who are ranked, including teams, again, who they have beaten, one of which on the road, who have the same record as them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're talking to Marty Leap from Black Shoe Diaries. Head on over there, Penn State's platform on SB Nation to get you set for Michigan. Penn State playing at noon Eastern in Happy Valley. Yeah, and it also matters for those people that just care about the playoffs and nothing else. We'll just consider the same people that are making that judgment are making the judgment all the way through, meaning the top 4 and 5 and 6. So,
I mean, even if I'm an Ohio State fan, I would be kind of salty over this because let's say, things get wild and Alabama beats Georgia and Ohio State and Oregon and Oklahoma all win out. You could be looking at not having that ranked win against Penn State, potentially giving Oklahoma that 4 seed over you or something. So, it's definitely has its ripple down effects to other teams.
Yeah. And it has the ripple effect to the ripple effect of, okay, not just Penn State, but Ohio State in that scenario that you just laid out. They'll probably play Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, who's considered lesser because they lost to an unranked Penn State team or whatever. They're going to have them ranked at that point, and it just kind of goes on and on from there. Looking at this matchup in your football team, Sean Clifford's obviously the guy that everybody brings up first and foremost because of what happened at Iowa. And, I watched every play of the Ohio State game coming off of that, or coming off the Illinois game, of course, in which he was not himself. But, 52 throws, and he looked healthy to me. He certainly gutted it out and played well. I thought he threw the ball well. Is it reasonable to think that he's healthy enough to be himself?
I mean, I think at this point he's as healthy as he's going to get before the end of the regular season, having time to rest. He definitely, he didn't play as well against Maryland as he did against Ohio State. I'm sure some of that, though, obviously, no player, coach, whoever is ever going to say this, but your adrenaline and all of that is pumping much more for the primetime showdown in Columbus than it's going to be for a 3:30 kickoff at Maryland. So I'm sure that was a factor also, but Cliff definitely is as healthy as he's going to get. Right now, he is definitely healthy enough, I feel, to help the Nittany Lions win football games. And with how much the rushing attack has struggled this year, if they're going to come out here to finish the season, get a victory over Michigan, potentially get a victory over Michigan State a few weeks down the road, it's going to be up to Clifford in that passing game.
Is this a rivalry with Michigan?
I personally think it is. I know, at least from the Penn State fan standpoint, I will tell you there are a lot of Penn State fans who cannot stomach Michigan for a lot of reasons. You go back to that 2005 season when the game looked like it was over, extra time got put on the clock. Chad Henne hits Mario Manningham coming across the back of the end zone, and that's the only game Penn State lost that season. There are a lot of games like that over the years against Michigan. I know even early in Penn State's Big Ten tenure, there were a lot of heated, close contests with the Wolverines. I can't speak for Michigan fans. Obviously, for Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State are always going to be the two big ones. But for Penn State fans, this is definitely a rivalry. It's definitely a team that a lot of Penn State fans don't like. And it's definitely a victory that always feels a little bit better than some others.
Marty, I have you on a regular basis to also break down the recruiting. Do you think this stretch drive is going to have much impact on the 2022 class?
The 2022 class, I don't think so. From a Penn State standpoint, largely because the class is almost done. They have 25 commits already. They probably could sign 27 at the most. Four-star linebacker Jayshon Barham out of St. Francis Academy in Baltimore. Actually, ironically enough, because of the weekend, the same school that produced Blake Corum, is a big target left on the board. Appears to be coming out of Penn State, Maryland, maybe Florida, but with some coaching questions of Florida, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that could take the Gators out of it. They had one more offensive tackle target on the board, Emil Wagner, but he committed to Notre Dame earlier today. So I think from 2022, it's not going to have much of an impact. And I mean, 2023 and beyond, potentially. But one thing this staff has done a great job of is building those relationships, cultivating those relationships. I mean, you look at their 2022 recruiting classes, currently ranked number 4 in the country, was ranked number 1 for a long time. And a lot of that work was done on the heels of a 4-5 season. So if you can recruit that well coming off of that kind of season, you know you're going to recruit well, coming off of a successful season. And James Franklin's proven that. So I think down the stretch, you probably don't see an impact to 2022 recruiting at all. But 2023 and beyond, it could have impacts. It's just that's just how it goes.
Hey, Tim, how you doing?
Hey, Mark. Doing good.
Got Tim Aiden on the line as well. Who also worked with Marty at Black Shoe Diaries on SB Nation. So, Tim, we've covered some ground here. I'll let you know right out of the gate. So we brought Marty in off the caller who I was debating the tenures of James Franklin at Penn State versus Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. So I think I got the thumbs up from Marty and my ability to defend James Franklin's accomplishments at Penn State being better than Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. So we started there. And then just talking about, first of all, not being ranked in the college football playoff rankings, which I think is completely absurd. Like, I don't even think it's close. Like, it's not that you should be even 24 or 25.
I mean, you beat they beat, excuse me. I mean, if Wisconsin and Auburn both easily ranked in the top 25 of the CFP are in there, but Penn State, who beat both of those teams head to head and has the same record as those teams, isn't. I mean, what's going on here? I mean, yeah, I get the Illinois loss was bad, but you're really punishing them that harshly for losing to Illinois by keeping them out of the CFP rankings, but Wisconsin and Auburn can get in without trouble. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And then to have Michigan ahead of Michigan State, who beat them head to head, is ridiculous if you ask me too. I mean, honestly, I hate to say it because it was a problem with BCS, but they should let computers handle some of this stuff.
Well, I could somewhat agree on that. That would be for a longer discussion, I think. So we could head in that direction. I can't completely get on board with that for sure, but I certainly they're objective. There's no doubt about that. If you feed them the right information, they should be able to spit out something that's reasonable. Talking Penn State, of course, taking on Michigan in Happy Valley, noon Eastern time coming up on Saturday, one of the great matchups every year in college football. We also talked about Sean Clifford's health, already kind of covered that ground that, like Marty said, he's not going to be fully given the opportunity to heal up and be himself until the off season, or certainly during the break after the regular season before the bowl game. But he bounced back after the Illinois game to really shoulder the offense against Ohio State, and then do enough against Maryland. Certainly the storyline of the game against the Terps was not just on the field with Jahan Dotson, but considering, his family was there, his extended family, the condition that his mom's in that gets touched upon during the television broadcasts. But Jahan Dotson with a record-setting day on Saturday was certainly special.
Oh, no doubt. For Jahan to have his whole family there, and including his mom, who, I think a lot of people know by now from numerous other broadcasters who mentioned it. Yeah, his mom's been battling cancer. So it's definitely, it's definitely, I'm sure, taking the emotional toll on Jahan, but it's also served as an inspiration for him to just give it his all out there on the field, and to just, for him, it kind of helps him put, things in perspective too, but it also gives him, the opportunity. I mean, it gives him motivation to just go out there and, do his thing every week. And I think it was so fitting that he ended up setting the Penn State single game record for reception yards, 242. He surpassed, I believe it was Bobby Ingram who held the record before. I could be wrong, but he broke the single game Penn State record.
Butler.
Oh, Deion Butler. I'm sorry. Why was I thinking Bobby Ingram? I think it's because he reminds me of Bobby Ingram with his style of play, but I digress. Yes. Breaking Deion Butler's single game record for receiving yards. And just the way he did it too. I mean, tie ball game, fourth quarter, and Penn State's in second and long. They're backed up in their own red zone, and Maryland's sensing it got momentum, and all of a sudden, Cliff floats one to Jahan, who somehow, I don't know what Maryland was doing to let him get so open like that, but he catches it, and you give him that much space, he's gonna take care of the rest, and that's what he did. He took it to the house for a touchdown, and Penn State didn't really look back from there. So, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of a more fitting environment for him to to have such a game, with his whole family in attendance, including his mom, who, hopefully, and it sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like she's doing well with her battle against cancer, and I hope she continues to make progress against that, so she can continue to go watch her son tear it up in the NFL over the next several years after this.
Now, as hardcore Penn State guys, what you guys talk about and what you respond to practically on a daily basis from Penn State fans is different than what I deal with here, being a national show, and there's only a small slice of Penn State fans, and then you got all these other fan bases. And so if I bring up Penn State, it's obviously a different narrative. And since Penn State's out of realistically the race for the Big Ten championship, but then the focus has been, boom, James Franklin. Is he staying? Is he leaving? We had an extensive conversation about this. Everybody check out my conversation with both Marty and Tim prior to must have been the Ohio State game, because obviously made some comments at the news conference, and that's when Ed Ogeron made his comments or was let go, and it was announced they were parting ways. So that opened up another opportunity potentially for James Franklin. But is that something that Penn State people talk about? Is that been the number one topic for quite some time now?
I mean, I feel like it kind of comes and goes a lot of times. As you would expect when they're winning and doing great, you don't hear anybody talking about it. When they're struggling, you hear people talk about it. Ultimately, I think from what has seemed to be reported by a lot of insiders with the Penn State program, things of that nature, Penn State is pretty ready to give James Franklin basically, it sounds like, whatever they have to give him to keep him from leaving. Excuse me, sorry. So yeah, if he does leave, I think, and I don't think he will. I'm going to preface that by saying I don't think he's going anywhere. But if he would leave, I think it would be completely his decision and nothing the school did or didn't do.
Okay.
Right. I would second Marty on that. It seems, or I guess I would say when the team's winning and you start hearing rumors about Frank, like I'm thinking earlier this year, the week of the Auburn game when, Clay Helton got fired at USC, and all of a sudden Dan Patrick is tweeting that his sources said there's mutual interest between James Franklin and Penn State. I mean, we all know Dan Patrick's got a great track record on such things. And, but once some respected, or it wasn't just Dan Patrick, other sort, but once you got these big media personalities that are putting it out there, all of a sudden, people run with it like it's going to happen. And I'm sure, the timing could have been worse for the team with that being Auburn week, whiteout week, but their credit. I mean, whatever he told the team, they had their little meeting with the team, and whatever he's telling the recruits. I mean, they seem to be satisfied with whatever he's telling them, and frankly, that's the most important thing. I would think if Franklin truly had a foot out the door, you would start seeing some more wavering of recruits. Like we'd seeing more stories of them taking visits to other places or decommitting altogether, and that hasn't been happening. And frankly, just from reading transcripts or watching him his last few weekly press conferences, he definitely sounds like a guy who wants to be at Penn State. He wants to try to win a national championship at Penn State. He's always said, he said it a few times, he wants to be the first black head football coach to win a college football national title. And I think he really wants to get that done at the program that he grew up loving as a kid, and that he wanted to play his college football at. Unfortunately, they didn't offer him a scholarship, and East Stroudsburg did, so he played there. But still, I mean, this is a program he's had a long time affinity for, and I'm sure he'd love nothing more than to be the first guy in the post-Paterno era to bring a national title to Happy Valley. So I second Mark. I don't think he's going anywhere, regardless how these last three games play out. And frankly, I think it's a good thing. I want to see this 2022 class remain intact. I want to get Drew Aller on campus and see eventually what he's capable of. Frankly, if I feel like this next few years, we're going to find out for sure whether Penn State can get over the hump under James Franklin. And, if they don't, then I get a feeling that Franklin and Penn State are probably going to move on after that. So I'd rather just be certain.
Yep.
Either way.
So Tim, we'll stay with you, and then we'll get Marty's take. What's your level of optimism / confidence for Saturday, and your keys to a Penn State victory?
So I'd say I put it at about, I'd say 60% confidence towards Penn State. So that's not me saying Penn State's going to definitely win this game, but I do think they might have a better chance than perhaps you think. I remember just from watching the Michigan State game, Michigan State really seemed to hurt Michigan's defense when they were able to go with tempo. And I'm sure Mike Yursich has been watching plenty of tape from that game, and he'll have a game plan in place to, make sure Sean Clifford has maybe some quick reads or some screen passes, just things where he can get rid of the ball within a couple seconds. So Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo don't have time to try to swallow him up, which Michigan's going to which are going to set out to do. That's it, because if you can disrupt Cliff in the passing game, you've basically disrupted Penn State's offense, because we all know by now they don't have much of a running game, if you can even call what they have a running game. So I think I look for that. I also, I think Penn State's defense is is up to the task to contain Michigan. Now, I think what does it, I think what maybe tips it to 60% confidence with Penn State for me is Michigan's injury issues. Blake Corum seems highly unlikely to play. I know, Harbaugh is keeping is floating it out there as a possibility he might play, but I think it's coach speak. He just won. And I'm sure Penn State staff seems to be preparing as if Corum's going to play, even though it's unlikely they won't. They don't want to be caught flat-footed, which is smart. But I'd be very shocked if Corum plays. So, and it sounds like Donovan Edwards, their freshman tailback, is also, much hyped freshman tailback, is also injured. So it sounds like it's going to be run Hassan Haskins 30+ times on Penn State. And, of course, McNamara will throw it on occasion and, capable passer. But frankly, I would prefer if McNamara throws it a decent amount, because I think the back seven is the strongest part of this Penn State defense. And Michigan's pass game, it's been fine. Hasn't struck me as anything to really write home about. I think the running game is what I'm more concerned with, especially, and maybe Marty hit on it before I came on, but Illinois, Brett Bielema, they just lined guys up, 6-7 guys in line, and just basically ran at Penn State. And, Penn State had trouble stopping it all day long. Hopefully maybe they'll adjust better if Harbaugh tries to copy what Brett Bielema did. But, we'll see. It certainly helps that they likely won't have Corum on hand. But still, Hassan Haskins, even if he's not a home run hitter when it comes to his running style, he's still a guy you could see him, continually picking up 4-5 yards, maybe breaking that occasional 15, 20. A guy who could still, wear a defense down. So, that'll be, that's one thing that could be concerned. But, I'm hopeful. Yeah, Penn State adjusts a little better. They don't allow him to run wild like they did with Illinois' running backs. And I think I think the home crowd. I think they'll, obviously it's a noon game, so maybe a little bit different. But I think they'll definitely, this is a chance to get their third ranked opponent scalped this year. They already took down Auburn, Wisconsin, as we mentioned before, and so, and of course, I'm sure team would love nothing more than to ruin Michigan's playoff hopes, because yes, even with the loss of Sparty, Michigan still very much has a shot. If Michigan State's already lost a game to Purdue, they get beat by Ohio State, which I'm thinking they probably will, then all of a sudden here's an opening for Michigan. If they can beat Penn State on the road, and then if they can take care of business at Maryland the following week, that sets up East Division Championship game against Ohio State at the Big House on Thanksgiving weekend. And who knows? It's rival. I know Ohio State's the more spirited team, but rivalry games. We've been treated some closer matchups than maybe you anticipated. So who knows? But here's a chance for Penn State to play spoiler, to beat them, to crush those hopes and dreams of the Michigan faithful.
Justin Burr, thank you so much for the super chat there. Hit the like button, please. Great job as always, Mark. Thank you so much for that. OH, Justin Burr, thank you for that. Yeah, Marty, your thoughts on the ball game?
Yeah, for Saturday, I think for me, the biggest thing is going to be, and Tim started to touch on this, you got to contain that Michigan running game. Even if it is Haskins getting a lot of the runs, and Tim, I'm curious if you agree with me or not, Haskins to me reminds me a lot of pre-injury Noah Cain as a running back. He's never going to rip that 50-yarder, but you look up at the end of the day and the dude's got 140 yards. And like you said, he mixed in the occasional 10, 12-yard burst. He's tough to tackle. I think there's a lot of comparisons there between those two.
You know what I was thinking, Marty? I was thinking Tony Hunt.
Yeah, that's another good one. Definitely. Yeah, because I could see that, because I think Haskins isn't quite as athletic as a fully healthy Noah Cain, and neither was Tony Hunt. So, yeah, that's a that's a really good comparison. But yeah, he's just the kind of guy that he totes the ball 30 times. And at the end of the day, he's got 140 yards and 2 scores. Like, where did that even come from? And, the weather to me, I think, is what, as a Penn State fan, might worry me most, because I do think Penn State can throw the ball in this Michigan defense, especially like you said, Tim, with the tempo that Michigan State gave them all kinds of struggles with. I think the linebackers in Michigan are good. They're not great. Penn State has had a lot of success in the past attacking Michigan linebackers, and I think you would see that continue Saturday. I think in an ideal world, you attack those linebackers with Parker Washington with the tight ends. I don't think Michigan's cornerbacks are capable of holding up all day long against Jahan Dotson and even Keandre Lambert-Smith. I think there could be some big chunk plays there to be had with Dotson and KLS. But again, with these weather conditions, it's going to make it tough to throw the ball. And with Penn State's offensive line, we've ragged on them all year. They've really struggled in run blocking. The pass blocking has not been terrible. At times, it's been really solid. That said, Michigan might have the best pass rush duo in the conference. So you've got to give Cliff time to make plays. I think if Clifford's given time to throw the ball and the weather conditions aren't that bad and Penn State can throw it, there's got to be success to be had there for the Penn State offense. And it just comes down to that defense not having repeated the Illinois game. I think what would really worry me, and what does really worry me, is Illinois came out and did what Harbaugh loves to do, and they were successful. And this is not a slight against Illinois, obviously, but they were successful with much less talent than Michigan has. That said, Penn State has had the opportunity since then to cultivate more defensive line talent, or not talent, more defensive line depth, excuse me. They've had time to get a little healthier. Hopefully Jesse Luketa will be back this weekend. So it's definitely a game. I mean, you can make the argument for either one of these teams to win. I think they're two very evenly matched teams. I think, it's going to come down to Penn State wants to go tempo and throw the ball. Michigan wants to run the ball. Whoever has more success doing what they want to do, I think wins the game. And this could be one of those games that comes down to who makes the least mistakes also. This could be a very evenly matched game where, let's say, this is where Penn State having that experienced quarterback at home could really pay off. Because, I feel much more confident in Clifford not having a dumb throw, silly mistake leading to a turnover playing at home than I would with Cade McNamara or JJ McCarthy playing at Beaver Stadium. So, that could be huge in this game too. Turnovers, penalties, things of that nature that always play a factor in close games.
Yeah, Mark, I was going to say, with regards to the run game, I mean, you mentioned, Illinois, how they lined up and rang as. I just don't feel like Harbaugh is going to, I don't know. I feel like he's going to want to throw a bit more than Bielema cared to. Especially because, to be fair to Michigan, obviously Michigan, they do have a semblance of a passing game, unlike Illinois, which frankly makes that loss even more infuriating because they literally couldn't throw the damn ball for life depending on. Yeah. And so, but yeah, I think, I do think, they'll definitely, like I said, I think they'll definitely throw a heavy dose of run at them. That's been their MO all season long. And it's worked. Here they are at 8-1, ranked in the top 10 of the playoff rankings.
Yep.
But, I think they are going to have to throw it on Penn State, though, to beat them, too. So I think, like I said, they built up, I like that you mentioned they built up more D-line depth since the Illinois game. And plus, Luketa will hopefully be back. So I'm hopeful they contain Haskins better than they contained Illinois' running backs. But that being said, I'm sure he will get his share of care. Tank Bigsby did it. Ches Malusi for Auburn. Ches Malusi did it for Wisconsin. Any team that Penn State's played with that rely heavily on their running back or run them a good amount, they've gotten their yards. The key is just, again, it's been all season long. Bend but don't break. They can rack up all the yards they want to. And, last week, Maryland, they're a throwing team. Talia Tagovailoa threw for 371 yards. That's pretty good. I think we can all agree on that. But again, how many points did Maryland score? 14. So at the end of the day, the only thing I care about is just how many points Penn State's defense holds the opponents to compared
Absolutely.
to how much Penn State's offense puts up. So,
well, Tim, we appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate you being here as always. Marty, appreciate you being here, breaking down Penn State and Michigan for us. Again, everybody join Marty and Tim, Black Shoe Diaries, SB Nation. Check out their work right there. They will have their predictions as well. All right, guys. Thanks so much for stopping by.
yeah, thanks for having
Appreciate
us,
it.
Mark.
Anytime. Always enjoy it.
All right. I think we've got a couple calls. We will definitely get to those. You guys have been waiting. Thank you so much for that. Super chat here. Dwayne, appreciate you pointing this out. 130 watching. Hit the like button. Don't be like the committee, leaving Penn State out of the top 25. So the committee did that. Don't you be like the committee. Good job, Mark. Great stream. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that, Dwayne. And let's pick up these last couple calls. Appreciate you waiting here. The voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Marcus, George. Happy
George.
Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day to you.
You know, thank you. Mark, I got a free haircut today, a free car wash. I ate free at Applebee's, and Jiffy Lube changed my oil for free. And there was like 9 other things I could have done, but I'm not trying to rape the system, you know?
Well, you're not raping the system. Those things are provided to you based on your service, what you've done.
Mark, I managed the officers club. I never had to wear a uniform.
Well.
I could grow my hair longer. That was my official job.
Well.
Nobody should be thanking me for anything. I had the time of my life.
Well, regardless, it's official.
Right. Hey, I did take care of the guys. I admit that. I had good bands. We overpoured. I was a good manager. You
That's
got
great.
that, didn't you?
Well,
We overpoured. I told my bartenders, I said, we're a nonprofit club, man. You can put extra quarter ounce in every drink. You know? Mark, I walked in the storeroom one day and I was the assistant manager this time. I caught my boss, the club manager, pouring rot gut whiskey into the Jim Beam bottles. He was taking the good shit home. Isn't that hilarious? And you know what I did? I shut the door and never said a word about it. I was like, what the? Life is so great. Anyway, back to football. I literally think Georgia can win the national championship with Stetson Bennett playing the major part of the game and JT being his backup. It's come down to this now. It's just down to this point. I think that's possible. I think they're good enough with that ferocious defense. They're 4 deep. They don't have a front 7. They have a front 14, you know?
I'm with you, George. I think Stetson can do it. Wouldn't that be something? Stetson Bennett,
Right.
national championship quarterback.
Mark, our season's over. I'd be willing to watch him win the Heisman. I swear to God. Let's do something fun. Let's have some chaos, right?
Whoa.
Like it comes down to the point they just have to give him the Heisman. They can't deny it. He has them undefeated. They're going to the playoffs. Yeah.
Stetson Bennett.
All right.
He can do it.
This is a 1-second segue.
Yes.
I want to talk about something else, but I want to fire everybody in the athletic department in Florida, except the soccer and the basketball coaches. But you know what I'm saying. I want them all gone. Strickland, Mullen. We're opening a $250 million facility next year, and it's only open to other athletes in the dining section so they can socialize, and so the shot putter can marry a football player or something like that, right? That's nice. I like that. Plus, it got them some kind of tax break. But we got palm trees, swimming pools, hammocks. Oh, it's the cream of the crop. Now I need a new coach and a new athletic director. I want to give Lane Kiffin $9.5 million a year. He's young. He can be there for 20 years. He could bring us home 3 or 4 national titles, maybe more. Compete with Kirby.
Yeah.
He'll recruit.
Go after him.
I'm just saying, he's not a wingnut like he used to be. He's grown up and matured.
Well, there's
Maybe
still a
he'll
little bit
bring
of
his-
that in him.
Maybe
but,
he'll bring his dad back as our defensive coordinator, get the Raiders back together like the good old days. something like that. All right.
All right.
I ran out of
Thanks,
stuff to talk
George.
about. Y'all have a good night. Bye.
You have a good night. I think that's about going to do it. So, hey, who just wrote this? Connor. We had Sports Channel 503 on what? Like 2 days ago? Our guy Ryan Winter on 2 days ago. 2 days ago. Sports Channel 503. So, yes, talk all sorts of West Coast football. Who talks more West Coast football than me? All right. Anybody else? I wanted to mention Cheryl, when I was honoring as many vets as I could think of that could possibly be in the chat. I didn't want to like overstep my bounds or didn't remember and all those things, but you came to mind, but I wasn't 100% sure. So Cheryl, thank you so much for your service. Appreciate that. All right. Looks like we are just about wrapped up for the night. I don't see anything else I need to address, but man, this list of college football games is crazy for Saturday. So everybody be back here. We will have a live stream sometime tomorrow. Don't know exactly when. So it'll be sometime tomorrow night here at the Voice of College Football live stream tomorrow, and we'll have some kind of content available for you here at the main channel coming up very soon. Want to remind everyone to join us on Patreon. 13-8 against the spread this past weekend. 120-77 against the spread. 4 new patrons at the Voice of College Football community this past day. Amazon, shop the Amazon link that we provide in the description section. Please do that. So it's that time of year. You're shopping for Christmas. You're on Amazon. Please use the link that we provide. Just go to the description section, grab the link, put it somewhere where you're going to remember it. Because I bet a bunch of you are like, hey, Mark said use the Amazon link. I'm going to do that the next time I shop. And of course, you're thinking something else. And I would do that. I am telling you, I would do that. If I was one of you and I was watching me and I was like, okay, I'm going to help Mark out, build the channel, doesn't cost me anything. I might as well do it. Use the link. Okay. And then I would just forget. I would forget unless I put the link somewhere where I would remember it to be right there when I was ready to shop. So please do that. Grab the link in the description section, Amazon, shop Amazon, use the link that we provide. Same exact shopping experience. Doesn't cost you a penny. Join us on Patreon. Get my picks, the picks from 20 media members, and we've got a lot of other stuff in store over there. You can write for us. Go to voiceofcollegefootball.com, voiceofcollegefootball.com, not the Voice of College Football, voiceofcollegefootball.com, voiceofcollegefootball.com. Go to the top of the screen, top of the page, write for us, and you'll be in contact with me. Appreciate the Super Chat contributions that we got. Keep in mind that you can contribute directly on Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App if you want to bypass YouTube. And yes, we could use a sponsor or 2 or 10. So if you have a business, you could benefit from sponsoring us here at the Voice of College Football, or if you can put us in contact with anyone who could sponsor us, please do. All right, I will see everyone back here tomorrow. Bring some folks with you. That would be phenomenal. That would be phenomenal. And so many comments in the live chat. It's ridiculous. So happy Veterans Day. Yes, Mike, thank you so much for that, of course. And there we go. See everyone tomorrow. Big college football day on Saturday. We will do our typical wrap-up show and call-in show. And again, any college football fans you know, tell them we're here. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. See you next time.